So good evening, everyone. As planned previously, and we have published, I think, in a little bit of hurry. Today we are having the workshop on power sector reforms, which is organized by the Electronics, Telecommunication Engineering Sectional Committee. So to deliver the two presentations, we have two eminent resource persons with us today. One of them is the Director General of Power Sector Reform Secretariat, Engineer Pugdu Niroshan. And also joining with him is Professor Asanka Rodrigo from University of Morto, representing the Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka. And to moderate the session, we have one of a very special person who has always been a huge part of the Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka. He is a past president of Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka, and he has played many roles, including the sectional committee chair. Now, I would like to invite Engineer Shavindranath Fernando to open up the session as the moderator. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Zara. Right, leave that. No, then the whole thing goes off.
Yes.
No, it's okay. You better put it. Put it back.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise they can't see me. I'm sorry for a bit of a swapping of the machines and so on and so forth. Good evening, everybody. I think we have quite a lot joining online, and we have few people here with us, including the former Minister of State, Honorable Ajit Pipera. We are encouraged to see you and many others who are here. Of course, few others. So to kick off the sessions today, the session will run like this. We have 3 hour time span. I wish to make it as productive as possible. And there will be 2 key presentations. That is Pugdu Niroshan, Engineer Pugdu Niroshan, who most of you may know, is the current Director General of the Power Sector Reforms Secretariat. So he will introduce to us the proposed amendments to the Act number 36 of 2024, the Sri Lanka Electricity Act. Now, by the way, the Sri Lanka Electricity Act is an overarching industry act, which has its origins somewhere in 1956, where the first Electricity Act, then the second Electricity Act, perhaps somewhere in 2009, which was never made into operational status. Then 2009, 2013, there were amendments, and 2022, there were amendments. And finally, we came through with the roadmap for reforms by way of Electricity Act 36 of 2024. Of course, there was a lot of discussion during that time, and we got a new government in between, and the government right throughout said that there are certain amendments needed for the Sri Lanka Electricity Act to function, and that shall take place on a future date. So the dates are approaching and approaching fast, and the Power Sector Reform Secretariat has taken action to initiate these reforms, and they have put out a concept paper to solicit views of the public. And early it was to be closed yesterday. It has been now extended up to 15th, I suppose. And during each time, still anybody can make their interventions. The Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka, in fact, began this process way back in 2022, when we had the first consultation of our members on 19th August, if I'm not mistaken, 2022. Why? Because by the time the cabinet has approved the cabinet appointed Power Sector Reforms Committee, and that's history. I'm not going to trace the history. And the result of Act number 36 of 2022-4 was a series of consultations. Even the draft bill was tabled in Parliament. Then I think about 14 parties petitioned the Supreme Court, and there were 12 determinations, and they were all taken into account, I suppose. And finally, it was approved on the 5th of June 2024, and it was certified by the Speaker on 27th of June 2024. So legally, there's a provision for the Act to be operative on 27th June 2025, unless the minister declares and gazettes an appointed date or something like that. So perhaps Pudu is the best person who can educate us on this matter. So now, without taking any more time, I am inviting Pudu to take us through the proposed amendments and also to tell us what he intends to do when the real reforms, the action points, have to come by the way of amendments to the particular act. So what do you, Pudu?
Thank you very much, Engineer Shavi. I think I'm audible, right? Can someone confirm?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Sankar, and good evening to you all, ISL members and all the participants today to this hybrid session on the amendment to the Electricity Act. As Engineer Shavi mentioned, ISL has done a great job throughout these 2 years to originate these stakeholder consultations 2022, way before this initial act on 2024 started commence. I mean, like before it's going to the Parliament as a bill, ISL has commenced this stakeholder consultation, though it is not heard by the previous government at that time and the previous administration. ISL and all these other stakeholders has done a kind of a tremendous struggle to do a kind of a genuine stakeholder consultation to convey the correct and the genuine consultation to constructively amend the current sections and the subsection in the 2024 Act. Anyway, this Act is the current Act on the electricity sector right now. As throughout the previous 2 elections, the current government, NPP government, during the election campaign also has promised and vowed this to the public in their manifesto that this Electricity Act will be amended according to the their manifesto towards a people-centric energy transition. Now the time has, as Engineer Shavi mentioned, this current act passed in 2024 June, somewhere in June, and it's signed by the signed and effected by the Parliament on 27 June 2024. As per the current situation, electricity is a kind of a not an ordinary service or goods or service. According to the natural nature of electricity, it has 1 year initial transfer period to have the appointed date on this 27th June 2025. Starting from that day, there's another 2-year transfer period to get this current CB restructured into the effectively restructured into the proposed 12 entities. Then that is a background on the situation. As the current government, initially we thought that before putting this proposed amendment to the as a bill to the Parliament, so we decided that to come with a concept paper to public and the stakeholders, right, to initiate a genuine stakeholder consultation on the proposed amendments before it goes to the Parliament as a bill. Generally, what we have seen in the last previous drafting period, we all have seen the final bill. Once it is, placed at the Parliament, then only Parliament members can, go with the discussions on the amendments. The public can go to the court on the for their concerns. So before going to the bill at the Parliament, what we have decided to go to the public and the stakeholders with the concept paper. Anyone can, refer the proposed amendment, proposed concept paper via Energy Ministry of Energy website, powermin.gov.lk. Then anyone can, come up with their own consultations and the proposals and suggestions to the proposed amendment via email reforms@powermin.gov.lk. Either you can visit Ministry of Energy in person and submit your proposals, or you can post it to the postal address 437 Gall Road, Colombo 3, to the Ministry of Energy. Then we have extended this time period for the written consultation till 14th February, considering, various stakeholders came up with their, suggestions, and to have a kind of a detailed review on the proposed amendment and the concept paper, we have extended, considering this request, until 14th February for the written consultations. Based on the contribution and the engagement of the on the written consultations, we are planning to have few in-person sessions, especially for the key stakeholders. It's totally subjected to the engagement of the written consultation. Then I will move little onto the proposed amendments. I will share my screen with a short presentation. After that, we can open, after Dr. Asanka's perspective on ISL on this reform process, then we can open the open to the audience. Then we can hear from them. Then I will take another few minutes at the end of the session to answer certain queries raised from this valued audience. Then let me share my presentation. Screen is visible, right? Asanka, can you confirm that screen is visible, right?
Yeah, we can see. No issue. You can go to the presentation mode.
Okay. I will directly go into the structure proposed in this current amendment in the concept paper. We all know that the current act is the current Electricity Act after this effective date from 27 June last year. Then it is the current act has proposed 12 separate entities instead of this particular utility, Ceylon Electricity Board. The current structure of the CEB, we all know that all the three main functions, generation, transmission, and distribution, is done by CEB. And from Negombo to Galle, we all know that there's another distributor called LECO is doing the distribution function in the coastal belt from the Negombo to Galle. Proposed structure is going to be three separate unbundled entities, one generation company to take over the function and the asset of the CB, then another transmission company to take over the function asset of the CB on the transmission segment, then the one distribution company to take over the functions and distribution related to the distribution of CB. three separate unbundled companies. It is purely entirely unbundled three companies on three different functions: generation, transmission, and distribution. All these three companies will be 100% permanently allotted to the treasury. It is 100% government owned companies. Then we all know the independent system operator, national system operator. It is again 100% government owned company. It will do the planning, procurement, and the implementation of the according to the long-term power system development plan. Generation companies along with the IPP and NCRE can involve with the generation market. NSO will do the procurement through PPS, and along with LECO, distribution companies will operate as distribution companies. As we all know, the distribution regions are distribution divisions in current CB is regionally divided. Initially, for distribution companies, there are four distribution companies, sub-companies under the main distribution company. Those four regional distribution companies will operate according to the same the regions operating the system. Then Public Utilities Commission as a regulator, it will remain to regulate the electricity sector. Consumers in the all four regions will have one dedicated distribution company. There's no retail market introduced within this first phase of restructuring. This all these Genco, Transco, and distribution are related to the restructuring process of the existing CB. When you go detail into the restructuring under these three separate what we call we can name as holding companies. Generation main company will hold these main three sub companies, subsidiaries, renewables, coal, and thermal. In the current act, all these hydros and these our Tambapavani 100 megawatt this wind power plant are two separate companies according to the current act. So we are going to combine these hydro assets and the only wind power plant owned by CB into one separate generation company and the main generation company. You can see all these three parent companies, rather holding companies, will not take licenses. Licenses are given to the subsidiaries under main three companies. Then combining coal company, Lanka coal company, and coal power plant, there will be another sub company under generation company. Then all these existing other thermal plants under CB will catered into a third generation company. To avoid any doubt on this structure, all these second, third layer companies or subsidiaries are structured under the main three holding companies. Then I will shift to the distribution company. As I explained previously, DD1 to DD4, all these four regions will be continued as according to the same geographical region as licenses under one distribution company. Then NTNSP, as per the current act, the National Transmission Network Service Provider, remain as it is, but the ownership structure will be changed. According to the current act, it will be private public a shared company, propose more than 50% to the government, rest might be privatized according to the current structure elaborated in Schedule 1 of the Electricity Act. The change we are going to implement and going to propose under this concept paper, NTNSP will be 100% government owned company through transmission company owned by the government. Then if you can remember, in the current schedule number 1, all these residual services catered into another separate company. We have brought that company under this transmission company. It will not be a licensee, but all these residual services starting from digital processes, IT processes, and construction and training division, and it can be some advisory and consultation divisions, all are categorized under transmission company. NSO will be remained as it is as per the current act. It will be a separate licensee who will do the planning, procurement, and the implementation of the future of electricity industry. Then the all current employees and the previous employees of CB, their pension fund and the EPF will be handed over to a separate company, kind of a trust. There's no change according to the, there's no change into the construction of this fifth company. It will remain as it is in the same as in the current act. Then I will go to a kind of a checklist on the amendment to the Electricity Act. All these, construction of the new companies and the change proposed to the Electricity Act will be complied according to the NPP government energy policy framework, which will be consulted throughout these processes of the previous during the election period, and it will be consulted again before getting into the parliament as a gazette within coming months. Will be shared within the stakeholders to a genuine and a wider stakeholder consultation to amend the current energy policy, which should have been reviewed every 6 years, and a delivery framework should have been reviewed every 2 years. So electricity is kind of an integral part of the national energy policy, which we should not take it as an isolation. It will lead to kind of economic, financial, and some other inefficiencies in the sector. So we are considering electricity as a kind of a integral part of the energy. As a whole, as a Ministry of Energy, we are going to implement this energy policy reviewed through the coming months under a stakeholder consultation. So these amendments to the Electricity Act will comply with the government energy policy. Then as we discuss what we have missed during the previous, this act and the drafting period and coming into the parliament as a bill, then going to be pass at the parliament, what we have seen, what we have missed as stakeholders is the consultation. We have seen several meetings conducted by the Ministry of Energy at that time, Ministry of Power and Energy, but this genuine stakeholder consultation has been blocked. So we have opened not the parliament bill or the act to the public, we have opened this concept paper for the stakeholder consultation. So we should not, misguided by this. Some I have seen that commented that we have, as a kind of a committee, we have, drafted this amendment. Then only we have opened to the public. I have seen that comment in various the social media sessions and even in the some other media. Not to have that kind of an idea behind our stakeholders, we have to identify these, whatever the proposed amendments are not the bill. So those are the proposed amendment as a concept paper that committee members has drafted and presented to the Minister of Energy. The same concept paper we have published to the stakeholders to take consultation before it comes as a bill to the parliament. Then, main feature, main function, main objective of this amendment is to make sure that unbundling is achieved. Unbundling, according to the function, generation, transmission, distribution, that unbundling process is decades old. We have missed that unbundling this exercise in, once we started this 1969 Act, It's a kind of a strong industry act. When we compare this 1969 Act with the 2024 Act, 2024 Act, we can identify it as a kind of a reform act. It's a kind of a transition act. It is not an industry act. So during this transition, during this unbundling session, unbundling exercise, we can identify this current industry act as a transition act, not an industry act. What we are proposing, considering this energy as one entity, one segment, there's a need of considering all other industry act, including petroleum, this atomic energy, in let's say future hydrogen. So if you are going with this LNG, we have to consider all these sub segment as one main sector as energy. So what we have missed during this industry, electricity industry, is the unbundling. So we will make sure at this juncture, unbundling will be happen at this time. This appointed date will not be extended by 27th June this year. Unbundling exercise will be completed. So we can mark a tick on that one. Including these separate three government-owned generation, transmission, distribution companies, we will introduce this independent system operator as it is in the Act as the national system operator. It will be again 100% government-owned entity. It will do the planning, procurement, and the implementation. Then one company, as I say, to take over the functions of the PF and the EPF of CB will remain 100% owned by government through the treasury. Then NSO will, we have talked about markets, as we all discussed several times within several sessions and seminars. We have to go through these monopoly years. We have to block not only the government monopoly, we have to block the private monopoly as well. As we are a small market, less than 3 giga peak, still after this financial crisis, economic crisis, still we are catching up the market and the industry. So we have to identify our small market with the energy security and sustainability, and having all these other fundamental principles within our energy system, within our industry, electricity industry. We have to pass through this monopoly to a strong single buyer market first. As the first phase, we will introduce this strong single buyer market, but that doesn't mean that we are not opening our electricity industry into the markets. Market should come to the industry with the maturity of the generation and the maturity of the T&D network. So after this establishment of the NSO, we can allow NSO to formulate the market features and the regulations and terms and conditions and the guideline to introduce national electricity market. We call it as a national electricity market. If you can remember, in the current act under section number 30, there's a market called wholesale market has been discussed. It's very, half a page. No guideline, no condition, no term, no regulation is mentioned and discussed in that section. But we can see that GenCos and DISCOs are allowed to have agreements before the establishment of the wholesale market. One of the main main amendment we have proposed is that to delete that section 30.4. Then we have seen again some comments. We have received already those comments from the several stakeholders. It is not to block the PPS between DISCOs and distributed generation schemes. We can have a kind of a limitation and take distributed generation schemes to the our system through DISCOs, but we have to limit and we have to avoid that our DISCOs to sign up with main power plant. The main reason is that our DISCOs are regionally divided. For a one particular consumer, we don't have the second or third alternative for a distribution company. Then since it is regional dividers, the second reason is that our market is not matured enough to have a excess generation to fairly distributed and fairly equally allocated through all these DISCOs in a regionally divided manner. during this phase, so we can't allow these discos to sign up with GenCos, considering that specific reason. That is why we have proposed that deletion of the section 30.4. But we will make sure that some limitation we will introduce to allow discos to sign up with distributed generation schemes after this stakeholder consultation as per the comments and suggestions received from the key stakeholders. Then open access, again we have seen some comments. We haven't touched the provisions. We haven't done any changes to the current act on the open access. Still under the single buyer model, we can have a kind of open access. Again, all these guidelines, terms and regulations we are proposing NSO to formulate within a certain time period. That time period D1, that implementation time period also as per the NSO's formulation exercise on the particular national electricity markets. Then at the last, we have seen again some comments on the SPPL limits. We have reduced that from 10 mega to 1 mega. The reason is that the whole exercise of this modernization of the electricity industry and the proposed amendment, even during 2024, that exercise, the whole exercise is targeting competitive, transparent procurement system. So if you are going for a kind of a competitive, transparent procurement system, why don't we consider that procurement for the renewable energies as well? So we all know that solar and wind, now the technology and the implementation and the execution at the national level is already matured. There are international companies, there are national companies, who have, have gained the maturity on design to implementation, design to commissioning of the renewable power plants from rooftop to ground mounted solar and also the wind power plants. So we have seen in recent tenders that wind power under the competitive bidding, it came less than 5 cents, $5 US cents, 5 less than 5. Then when we compare this Sampur, this solar power plant, we have seen the prices came down US cents 6. So we can go for competitive procurement on renewable energy. Yes, but still with the some storage facilities, with some kind of a new energy proposals, we can still open SPPA for a certain amount of megawatts. But still with the some genuine consultation from these development agencies and development partners and also national renewable companies and also from these professional institutions, we are ready to reconsider that as well, but still not yet decided. But during the consultation process after 14th February, we can have a kind of finalization on that as well. Those are the main changes in the amendment to the Electricity Act. If you can remember that National Electricity Advisory Council, NEAC, has been removed from the this proposed amendment. The main reason is same as I explained, electricity we are considering as a kind of integral part of the energy. So this NEAC, that E is only for electricity. That advisory council's main feature and function and the responsibilities only remains to the electricity sector. So what we have discussed during our campaign as well, for all these ministries, we are going to introduce kind of advisory council. Then Ministry of Energy also will be having a kind of a council, not only to the electricity, but to cover all these energy sector. Then we are thinking, we are proposing similar to Electricity Act, all these other industry act, including petroleum, atomic energy, then future hydrogen and LNG. We have to have a kind of a amendment to the all these other industry acts as well. Then the regulator, the current regulator PUCSL, should have been an independent entity throughout this process, but we have to make sure that some independency and also some kind of a strong involvement to the regulator function to make sure that public mandate is secured during this regulatory process as well. That independency is required, but same time that regulator should be accountable to the public as well. So all these changes to be introduced in coming months under the proposed Energy Transition Act, which will be again consulted through a kind of a detailed, genuine consultation throughout the drafting period. So that is the end of my presentation. Then after the other members' concerns, we can have a kind of open, session on some inquiries. Then later, after this 14th February written consultation period, there will be some oral and in-person sessions. During that sessions also, we can have a another round of discussion before these amendments coming into the parliament as a bill. Thank you, Dr. Shavi and Sarah, for arranging this session to address and convey our message to the mainly engineers and all the other stakeholders. Thank you.
You are muted. You are muted.
Thank you very much, Pavudu, for the very comprehensive overview of the way forward. But we are yet to hear the particular nitty-gritties. We'll come to that later on. The way I propose to proceed is we'll listen to the next speaker. Then there are a few people who have sought permission to make certain comments, and they will be accommodated. Then we'll stop the presentations per se. Then we will get into a structured discussion on the concept paper under those salient topics. And at that point, I like the entire audience to raise your voice if you want to by raising your hand, and our support team will take note of your desire to speak. And all in all, finally, whoever who speaks and whoever who cannot speak still have an opportunity to send your comments to the ISL Secretariat, or that certain QR codes and all those things are provided. Even on this chat, you can, if you want to make certain further comments, you can send your email address or WhatsApp number, and we'll get in touch with you and solicit your views on that. So the way forward is next will be Asanka, and then I will allow few people who would like to say certain things, and after that we'll break, and not break in person, but we will continue, but it will be the plenary session thereafter. So bear with us. We'll start going that way. Then over to you, Asanka.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Shavi, and hope you can hear me and my slides are visible. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. So I think Pubudu made my the life easier because he gave a very good introduction about the overall concept paper, where there can be certain things which I may again repeat, and just for the give a better idea about the audience, what the new government propose and how they are going to do the amendment or do the changes in the power sector, so that anyway, there can be certain overlapping areas, but bear with me because I independently prepare this presentation so that there are, because of that, there are certain overlapping areas. Now, as all the previous speakers said, okay, we got engaged with this power sector reform from the beginning, where there was a discussion about to reform the power sector, so that we had several ISL workshops and even the university as a ESOC, we organize certain workshops and awareness sessions, and also we made certain type of submission to the government at that time to consider certain type of positive things, so that we always said that the power sector reform is a must, where we have to move forward. We cannot go ahead with the old CEB Act, where we have to modify it. We have to restructure the power sector, so that because of that, we positively give our comments throughout this the process. But certain things were adapted, but the certain things were not adapted at that time. That's why still we are trying to give our positive feedbacks, constructive feedbacks. Because that's for the betterment of the power sector. So that now, fortunately, most of the committee members of this concept paper is all with us throughout this consultation, and you can see now they know what we talk about the given positive feedback, so that fortunately most of the things were adapted, but I want to highlight few things as per my independent judgment, so that as ISL perspective, so that everybody can get some kind of idea about openly, so that what type of positive improvements we can do to the act, so that power sector will be in better form in the future. So just to give you some idea, now when you look at existing Electricity Act, which will be coming to enforce in June, so that in that one, hold this single buyer model, they propose to go with the wholesale competitive market, but it is also not immediately, so that we are even though the structure facilitate that one, they have given a timeline, like a 5 years timeline, to become the entire market as a wholesale market. So that type of a clear guideline was there, but it's again a progressive type of things. But they made a certain the exact timeline where after 5 years time, the entire market will be the open or the wholesale competitive market. So that's how it was there. Now the existing CEB, it is proposed to subdivide into the 12 companies, so that as per the Companies Act, so that there are 12 companies. So all the power generation belongs to the CEB will be, it's proposed to have 4 companies, 1 hydro and 1 the thermal company, that is other oil and other things other than the coal, and 1 coal company, and the 1 the wind, that is the Sampapani wind, as Pubudu also explained. Visa remain as it is, and so that the transmission will be subdivided into 2 as per the current the act. So that one is the National Transmission Network Service Provider, and also the dispatching and scheduling and the procurement will be done by the NSO, National System Operator. And the distribution, okay, now at the moment CEB has 4 distribution licenses, so that it is proposed to have the 4 different companies for those 4 distribution licenses, and the LECO will be the separate licenses, and the separate company LECO will continue as it is. And also it is proposed to have additional distribution companies as well, to open up the distribution market as well. And also for the transmission also, in that act, it is proposed to have additional transmission licenses as well. Now, if you look at the current CEB, as I said, it is proposed to segregate into 12 companies out of that, so that even during our workshops and everywhere, we highlighted that, so that there are only 2 companies, the 100% government owned. One is the hydro company, and next one is a NSO. So that is 100% government owned, which is given in the act as well. And the EE&TESC is a 50%, more than 50% government owned. That means there will be a other the partners will also be invited to the EE&TESC. So that's the structure. So that other than these things, there is nothing mentioned about other companies. This is also one of the key things which we highlighted during our whole consultation and other things, so that to clearly mention that, okay, what will happen to those companies? Are they going to be the fully private owned, or whether it is a private government partnership, or it will be totally the government owned? So that, but it's totally open in the act. So that that is one of the key things we highlighted during the previous consultations and the previous IESL submissions. And also there were good things where they proposed, like the open access as well as the captive generation. Those type of things were like looking at the future. Okay, they in the act provide certain provision, but even there were certain type of things which we highly criticize. That is the national, the Electricity Advisory Council, or what we call as a council, and which the council can give certain directive to the minister, and the minister can also give a directive to the council, which also we question about the how it become a council like that, independent council. And also as per the the current act, so that where the minister can directly give instructions and interfere even for the regulators work, so let the NSOs work, which also we said that is a very high threat to the independency of the sector. And because of that, these things should be removed. So that, but unfortunately, all these are things in the, as per the current act, all these things are there, where even minister can even interfere with the regulatory activities, as well as he can interfere to the NSOs, because earlier, as per the cabinet approved expert committee, what they have proposed is an independent the system operator. But in the act, they change it as a national system operator, where even the minister can interfere their day-to-day operation. So that those things we highlighted as negative things which need certain type of improvement. And now, even for this wholesale, because the act basically starting with saying that, okay, they are going to the next stage, obviously, so that at the moment we are having the single buyer model, so that we are coming with the monopolistic structure. And then now we are in the single buyer. Next stage is the wholesale competition. And then the after the wholesale competition, if the market is ready with the wholesale competition, we can move to the retail competition. So that is the standard practice of power sector. So how the power sector is evolving, starting with monopolistic, single buyer, and the wholesale, and then you can go to the retail competition. So that that also we highlighted even our previous submissions. Now, as all the others explain, I'm not going to again reiterate, so that there are prerequisites to act to come to the power, so that there are the preliminary and should be prepared and approved, and then there should be a national electricity policy, and also the national tariff policy. As per my understanding, none of them are not are ready. And also even the annual procurement plan and the long-term system development plan, those are not ready at the moment. And but as per the act's condition, so that automatically act will be enforced after 1 year, that is 12 months of publishing the act. So that that will be basically 27 June 2025, so that the act will become come to a force, so that even though we are not doing anything. So that's the legal condition of the current Electricity Act. Now there is a proposed reform in concept paper, so that which was given in 20th of January, so that we are also reviewing, so that what type of proposals are there to amend the existing act, which we continuously highlighted. There are certain things which need to be amended for the betterment of the power sector in the future. So that there are a lot of good things. Obviously, we have to thank to the committee so that they have considered even the ISL submission, because most of the members were in the ISL committee as well. And because of that, they recognize, we highlighted that electricity is not a standalone thing. It is a part of the national policy. So that because of that, we need to have a national policy, and the electricity should be as a part of the national policy. We have to look at the overall the sector, and then the electricity policy should be a national policy, so that in the concept paper clearly identify that as a requirement. Very good thing. And also the proposed to remove this the National Electricity Advisory Councils, because there are a lot of the conflicting situation with the committee or advisory council, and because of that even ISL highlighted those things. Now in this concept paper it says that they are going to remove this advisory council as well. Again, a very good thing. And also the because we highlighted that in the structure, other than those two companies which are 100% government owned, there is no any indication about what will happen to the other company. But in this concept paper, they are saying the 100% government owned, so that they are not going to have even a government-private partnership and other things. So that, but we have to discuss about that matter, so that how they are going to do the expansion with the 100% government-owned company. But initially, what they are proposing to have a 100% government-owned the establishment for all these CEB at the moment, whatever in the CEB, so that will be converted to a companies, but those companies will be 100% government-owned. And also it is also they are also identifying that we have to move to the wholesale competitive market. What they are saying is, in the previous act it says the 5 years time period, but in the new consent paper they are saying as a progressive or as gradually, but no timeline. That also we have to discuss, so that because if there is something without a timeline or target, so that indicates that okay, even a government or whatever the institute is not ready or not studied about what is their timeline. Even for the undergraduate or whatever the student work, we say that okay, you have to plan everything and say, put the targets, so that again the market also we have to look at what should be the target. Even the 5 years is not enough, so that we have to have a certain targets, so that rather than keeping it open, so that the better to have certain type of targets for wholesale competition as well as the retail competition, so that our market can be the ready with the future requirement. And also again we highlighted that there are certain threat or the situations can arise with the monopolistic the way where how they written certain company formation. And fortunately, okay, that is also identified by the committee, and said that okay, they will avoid the creation of the monopoly. Very good things that should be there. Even as the Pubudu mentioned, it cannot be a government-owned monopoly or even a private-owned monopoly, so that all the monopolies should be avoided. So it's a very good things identified in the concept paper. And also there are it's also identified. From the beginning also we said that this is not something like a CEB's reforming or restructuring, because we have to look for entire power sector reforms. So that this concept paper also identified that and stated that, so that they are looking for a entire reform. It's also a very good things which identified in the concept paper. And also there are certain things which we have to highlight. During my independent reviews, I noted that now they have introduced new objectives. Okay, of course, there are in overall good, but there are certain terminologies, even for example, like a continuous, reliable, convenient, and clean quality supply. So that I can understand the quality, continuous supply or reliable supply, but the convenient supply, I don't know how we are going to give or monitor a convenient supply or clean supply. What is the meaning by the clean supply? Because of course there are power quality the certain parameters, but what it's mean by the clean supply, again, we have to rethink in objectives, so that what they are really meaning of those things. But since it is a concept paper, okay, at the moment that is okay, but when they are drafting, look for the better wording in those type of things. And also that they are saying the proactive mechanism to continue with the certain instability and the conflicting situation, how to manage those companies, so that is also given there as an objective. That is also a good thing. And minimize the impact of electricity generation onto the environment. Likewise, there are new objectives are also given. And also, as I said, one of the key things in this concept paper, what they're saying is, compared to the previous, existing Electricity Act is, they are saying that, so that wholesale competitive market will be in a progressive manner. As I said, okay, because that indicates that, okay, the no plan there, so that if you keep it open means, okay, even you can continue another 10 years, 20 years, single buyer model. Is that what we need for the Sri Lanka? We have to rethink. So that, and also the to protect the public from the danger is removed, and the risk, those type of good things are there. And also the this decarbonization also, because even in the previous submissions, we question about putting those type of things into the act, whether it is really needed. So that in this one, they made certain type of, they also observe that one and say that, okay, rather than put in decarbonization, they are saying is minimize the carbon footprint. I think that is a good word, rather than the putting those type of decarbonization. That those are good things which we see as a the concept we can see in the concept paper. And now, if you look at the market, now I explained what is in the Electricity Act at the moment, and the market structure in the new proposed concept paper. The clearly says that they are going ahead with the single buyer model, so that we have to think. Of course, in the transition period, what I feel is we can go ahead with the single buyer, but we have to open up it for definitely for the wholesale market and the retail market in the future, so that there should be certain the timeline for those type of implementation. Otherwise, okay, you can drag it without doing anything, and so that the progression of the market will not happen if you go like that. So that because of that, I insist to reconsider and give a strict guideline, so that if the 5 years is not enough, that's fine. But you need to have a certain the timeline how the market will be the form in the future. And also the good thing is the council is already removed, so that they are going to remove the council. And because of that, there will be an advisory committee which is advising to the minister. It's a good thing in the, as I said earlier, in the new concept paper. And now, when you look at the generation, earlier they proposed to have 4 generation companies, but in the new concept paper, as Pubudu also explained, so this hydro and wind put it to a one company, and the coal a separate company, and the thermal, other oil and other thermal as a separate company. And also all of them are under a one holding company. So that if you look at overall now, in terms of the company registration, so there will be, as I understood, if I am wrong, others can clarify me. But in terms of the company registration, there will be 4 companies in the generation, so that there is no difference between the previous one and this one. But the only thing is it will be 100% government owned, the 4 companies, so that there will be one holding company plus 3 subsidiary companies, so that they have to register those companies. And ultimately there will be, you have to appoint directors and everything, so that there will be 4 company for the CEB generation. And also there will be NSO. NSO will remain as it is, as a the separate. It was 100% government owned, now also 100% government owned. And then, okay, the transmission, okay, now they are going to create a transmission company. So that earlier it was a one company. Now it is proposed to put these other functions of the CEP to the transmission and create the holding company, so that there will be two companies plus holding company. So that the other functions will be handled by one company, and the transmission network will be handled by another company. And overall, there will be a parent company or the holding company. So everything will be 100% in the as per the given the concept paper, but there will be, as per the company registration, as I understood, there will be 3 companies there. And also the additional transmission. Now, in the earlier act, it says, okay, anybody can make a, or if they have a letter from an NSO, and they can go and build up the additional transmission licenses. But in here, they are saying that it should be a company, and the company ownership should be more than 50% government. So that it's a condition given in the concept paper, so that there will be a separate the entities, so even transmission licenses with the 50% government the shares. So that's a different things, but it's outside the CEB's current asset, and the other thing, it will be new company. And also the CEB's the fund, so that EPF, ETF, and other the pension, everything will go to one company. It will be handled by the one company, so that it's 100% government owned company, so that there will be another company there, company as per the given concept paper. And also the distribution in the previous one, it was proposed to have different companies, CEB 4 different companies, and the LECO separate company. Now, for the CEB companies, they are proposed to have a holding company, so that 100% government owned, and also under the subsidiary, so there will be 4 different companies. So that altogether, for the distribution, there will be 5 companies, so that you have to register 5 companies in the as per the company registration. So that, and nothing mentioned about the LECO. So that altogether, when you look at the CEB restructuring, so that earlier, as per the act earlier, current act, it was proposed to have 12 companies. Now, altogether with the holding companies, there will be 14 company registration as per the new concept paper. And they assume that even in the previously, we argued about, okay, now even for the 12 companies, so that the 12 into 5 directors per company. So how the minister is going to appoint directors for those companies, and who will be the company directors, and what are their qualifications, those type of things. Even the same questions are arising. Now, not 12 companies, as per my understanding, there will be 14 companies. And how the minister, because in earlier, so that the minister will be appointing the directors for the government-owned companies, and other directors will be, as per the Companies Act, they are going to form the director. But in here, as per 100% government-owned company, so that they probably, whatever the government will have to propose the director. So that assume that the 5 directors per company, so that there will be 14 companies, 17 directors you have to appoint. And nothing mentioned about their qualifications and other things. But why I'm informing that one is because in the NSO and the other companies in the existing act, so that due to our influence, so that the composition and their qualification all are mentioned. But in the new one, okay, new companies which are coming to under the government, so that how they look like is nothing mentioned on the concept paper. Those things we are still open, where they can make certain type of modification to them. And also the LECO. So that now what will happen to the LECO? So that because it talk about distribution holding company only for, as I understood, for the CEB's distribution divisions of the licenses. So that what will happen to the LECO, the CEB share in the LECO, and going to, okay, what will happen to the LECO is unclear in the concept paper. That need to be also looked at. And also are the are you proposing to discontinue or not allow the additional distribution companies? So that is also need to be mentioned, because nothing is mentioned about that. So that whether the additional distribution companies can be formed or not need to be discussed or need to be clearly identified, so that what will happen to the future. So that I don't know, because the concept paper does not talk about what will happen to the additional distribution companies. And again, now this the minister's influence, because the insist, okay, the sector should be independent, and because of that, this political influence, directly influence for the day-to-day activity should be avoided, and even for the regulatory activity. So that what will happen to that one, because the act is going to keep those the provisions as it is, or are they going to remove them? I will show you few examples, because nothing mentioned about this the concept paper about those things, so that that need to be clarified as well. So that and even the as Pubudu said, okay, the open access and the captive consumers or the generations, so they are going to continue. It's a good thing, but I couldn't find anything about the concept paper, what will happen to them. So that better to, okay, status them, so that if we are going to continue them, it's a good thing. But if we are going to discontinue, that is also we have to review. So those are, because they are good things which we have to facilitate for the betterment of the future power sector. And also, as I said, so now there are large number of CB subsidiaries, so that the nothing mentioned about those subsidiaries, even the LICO, even the Lanka Energies and other. There are, you can see the structure of the CB subsidiaries. There are the certain shares from the CB. Okay, what is going to happen for these companies? So that the nothing mentioned. So that I don't know what will happen to those companies in the future. So that this is also highlighted for the previous the act also, but even this one in this concept paper, nothing mentioned about it. That need to be very seriously looked for, so that what will happen to these companies. And also now when you look at, of course, there are good things where they identified that there should be a national energy policy, and the electricity should be a part of those policy. And it says that, okay, the national energy policy will be developed by the committee appointed by the minister. So that again, okay, as a concept, that is okay, but we have to go for a detail, so that of course after the drafting, we can look for those things who will be the committee members, whether there will be a representation from all the stakeholders. Those things should be defined, so that in the given concept paper, it just says that it's a minister appointed committee will look for this energy and the electricity policy, but who will be the committee members and how they are going to do this one, whether with the consultation or not. And those things should be clarified, or should be looked for when they are revising the act. And also, whoever the committee who are in the committee should be responsible for and accountable for the policies. And because of that, that should also be looked for, not just like an independent or voluntary, or even like the whoever come in there, and then ultimately they can do the whatever, or they can propose whatever, and the later the sector will be in trouble if they go like that. Because of that, it is very important to make the committee members accountable whatever the policies they are making, and there should be that type of a very strong committee with the stakeholder representation, so that then that will help to have a better power sector in the future. And also now, as I said, the national system operator, even we in the previous act, we highlighted that, okay, there are certain responsibilities, highly technical responsibilities, the given there for the national system operator. It is like the brain of the power sector. So that so we said that even in that, that is a 100% government-owned company, but the Act says who will be the directors of the company. So that is a good thing. That's why I highlighted. Now in the new companies, okay, nothing mentioned about this concept paper. Who will be the directors? How many directors? And what will be the composition? So that obviously, since it is a concept paper, that's okay. But those things need to be looked for when the drafting is happening. And in here, the one thing we have highlighted is the CEO. In that one, whatever the reason, because this is a highly technical engineering subject, where they said that, okay, even a CEO can be an administrator. Those type of things should be revised, so that even we highlighted to the previous government also. But even in this concept paper, nothing mentioned about those type of things, so that need to be looked for when the drafting is happening. And also due to the time limitation, I will quickly go through. And there should be independent mechanism for the appointing directors, as I said, because that should be clearly mentioned, so that rather than keeping it openly, so that then even we can make our observations. And because at the moment it is the fully open, nothing mentioned about, because when the companies will be fully government owned, so that definitely government will going to have the committee members who will be the composition of that. And if it become like any other, like a department or something, so that that will be the end of the power sector. So that because of that, very clearly we need to have a very clear, so that the guideline or very clear statement about the who will be the directors of those companies. And also the method for assessing the demand, again, okay, because NSO cannot do now after making the companies now at the moment CEB, so that they can get the information from all the other even distribution licenses, generation licenses, and other people. But after segregating them into the companies, so that the NSO alone cannot do this demand assessment and other things, where there should be a certain the collaboration with the distribution planning and the generation and other things. So that because of that, those things should also be looked at when they are forming the companies, and there should be an interlink of those distribution companies, especially with the NSO, so that otherwise there will be a certain conflicting situation. These things should be looked for when drafting the new bill. And also the independency, as I said, okay, it's very, very essential to have the independent, the NSO, so that if the minister can make certain type of the recommendation or the day-to-day recommendation, and even if the minister can influence the long-term power generation plan, where it's a highly technical thing, so that that will be again the end of the power sector, which is already happened. So that because of that, we don't want to continue the same thing in the future. So that because of that, even for the previous the act, we highlighted that a certain part need to be removed, or from the act, where the minister cannot do that type of political influences to the independent operator. So that it should be a purely an independent operator. So that that should be clearly mentioned in the new bill. And also, as I said, so this is we highlighted even before, because as a one example, like a long-term generation expansion plan, the power development plan, so that it's a highly technical thing. Usually the NSO do all their software, the simulation, and then do the cost optimal, the long-term generation plan and the transmission plan, and then submit it to the regulator as per the act. It says that it need to be submit to the regulator, and the regulator can the review it, and then it says that it should be with the regulator's recommendation at the moment. So the regulator approve the plan, and then the go ahead. But in this one, the regulator can only give a recommendation, so that it's not a regulation. It's they are just like a independent the reviewer. So that those type of things, and also then the NSO, as per the recommendation given by the regulator, even NSO can accept the recommendation because they are just recommendation, not a regulatory directives. And then NSO can submit it. Now, as per the current act, it should be submitted to the minister, and the minister even can do the changes. So that nothing mentioned about in the concept paper what will happen to this process, because we highlighted that this should be changed, and the regulator should be independent, and even the NSO should be independent, and only the government can give the policy directives, not these type of things, because this is they can do the certain amount of the influence the system, so that that can badly affect the entire operation of the power system. So that these things should be revised in the new bill, so that which we think that that need to be looked at the committee. And also as Pubudu also mentioned that, so the renewable energy procurement, now it says that at the moment the minister has the freedom, so that not exceeding 10 megawatt, he can gazette what is the maximum limit. Even minister want to reduce it to a 1 megawatt, depending on the market condition, he can reduce it. Even that provision is there in the act, so that by the making a gazette, so that the minister can do that type of changes. But in this one, proposed one, so that there is a strict value given as a 1 megawatt, which I feel that normally these type of values should not go to an act, so that where the depending on the market condition, depending on what is happening in the industry, so that even that can be given to the minister. Minister can anytime make a gazette notification and say that if we want to reduce it to 1 megawatt, he can reduce it depending on the situation. So that because of that, my independent the proposal is to not to put those type of values to the act, because if you put it like that, so even if you want to change it, again you have to go to parliament, go as an amendment to the act. So that will be a very tedious process. So that because of that, better to keep that provision with the minister. Those are okay, because those are policy. The government can take a policy directive and check whether they want to keep it 5 megawatt or 1 megawatt or 2 megawatt, so that based on the policy directive, so that a minister can make a gazette. So that because of that, I think this is a negative things which they propose in the concept paper, because when you look at the last year is a very marvelous year for the renewable energy, so that even for the solar, we reach 1 gigawatt the power, and also the last year itself, so that the solar reached something like more than 600 megawatt. Out of those 600 megawatt, as per the SCS data, so that there were like the ground mounted 175 megawatt. So that out of that, you can see there are only the something like a 50-50. So that there are only the 82 megawatt from the CEB tendered values, and the SPP also, like a usual feed-in tariff, there are 92 the 0.9 megawatt. But main thing is, out of these 82 megawatt, only 2 megawatt more than the 1 megawatt values, and also this 92 megawatt, there are only 2 megawatt less than 1 megawatt values. So that need to be looked at. That's why, because depending on the market condition, because if we can say that, okay, we will go for the wholesale market in a progressive manner or in a gradual manner, so that even this one, the keep it to the gradual change rather than having a drastic change. But of course, we have to go with the competitive bidding and the competitive procurement. That is our final target, which we insisted even in the ISL submission, no doubt about that. But again, as the concept paper says, it should be progressive, so that not a drastic change like that. And putting these type of values to an act can make another bad repercussions. So that with that, okay, basically what we are insisting is to have a transparency, accountability, and the efficiency in the power sector, so that all these the things which we are highlighting is to have a better power sector in the future, so that which will be transparent, accountable, and the efficient as well as sustainable. And also we have to keep the regulatory independency. That is a must, okay, everywhere in the world, so that it's one of the key aspects which we are highlighting. And because of that, we have to have the regulatory independency throughout our power sector, that the regulator should be independent. They should not be the politically influenced, so that that need to be, okay, that should be continued. And also the other things, due to a time limitation, I will stop from them. These are the good, some of the things which we highlight as a good government, the governance, and which also accepted in the concept paper also. It's a good thing, so that they also highlighted these things. So it's a good thing. So that finally, so that thank you very much for the giving this time. All these things are positive feedback. So the constructive criticisms which we can do to enhance this upcoming bill in a better way, which will benefit to the entire power sector of the country. Thank you very much. Over to Mr. Shavi. Mr. Shavi, you are muted.
Sorry. All right, now am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So thank you very much, Asanka. It was a long presentation. It was absolutely necessary because this is the crux of the matter. This is why we are here today. Pubudu made his concept paper, and ISL, we had a group going continuously, monitoring from the day that we submitted our first draft in 2022, continuously, and now we have come all this far. So we cannot now give up. So that's why he took so long to explain the position of the ISL as at now. But we are all ears today. Which means everyone and anyone who is in this audience is free to express their opinions, and we are facilitating those consultative process so that the Power Sector Reform Office will take note of what the engineers and other stakeholders have got to say. I have invited 4 personalities to make very brief presentations, preferably 5, maximum 10, to capture a few things. The first to go is one of our members in the team, Professor Anura Vijayapala. I'd like him to say something about what he thinks about the regulatory aspects and whatever subject that we discussed during our preparatory meetings, to express your opinion. If Anura is listening, can you please come in and say something? Anura, are you there? Anura? Okay, if Anura is not there, we will go to a very important, is he coming in? He's coming in, yeah, okay. Anura, you are there? You can unmute.
Yeah, I'm there. I couldn't unmute myself. Somebody had to do it. Okay.
Now,
Okay, I will be very brief because time is important for the discussion. Am I clear to you, Shavi? Okay. I hope you can hear. I can't hear you. Shara, am I audible?
Professor Andrew, we can hear you.
Okay,
You can go ahead.
I'll be very brief. One thing I notice is, that I know that this government has different policies. That is why this change is required. But if we make Electricity Act to be changed at a change of every government, it is bad for the sector, bad for the electricity industry, bad for the country. It should be a long-term document which is acceptable to all in the country, all the parliamentarians of all the parties. So I would like to have it as a consensus. Otherwise, next government comes, they will again change. And so I like to request all those responsible to try to make it agreeable to many parties and many to accommodate many views, but with the sole intention of making it country friendly and the nation friendly. That is one request. Second is, it is better if we can have some private sector participation in the distribution companies in order to introduce sector management efficiencies into the system. One of the key problems with the distribution entities is many complain, even I myself complain, that these distribution companies are not customer friendly and their services are not very efficient towards customers. So there should be some kind of private sector management introduced into these companies, maybe at least having at least 30-40% of their ownership be in the private sector, and keeping while the big majority in the government sector, so that these companies can be made more efficient. And it is right that many large government the assets are kept in government ownership, like hydropower. All these are good, but the private sector will come, I hope, in the form of IPPs in the future as well. And this 1 megawatt limit for I think it is not for SPPA probably, as I heard in the presentation. Maybe the SPPA will go for even 10 megawatt, but the purchasing policy will be different. So up to 1 megawatt, if I am wrong, please correct me. If to up to 1 megawatt, it will be feed-in tariffs. Beyond that, up to 10 megawatt, it will be competitive bidding, and all under this standard power purchase agreement. That is what I understood. So whether the 1 megawatt is the right threshold, I don't know. That you can discuss and determine. And also, as His Excellency the President said one other day, the problem of our country is high electricity cost, and the government want to make it, comparable with the regional values. But I don't think this changing of the act or anything will do that. Therefore, if government or anybody keep hope that the change in the act will make sector efficient and reduce the electricity cost, it's a myth. It's about the generation cost that we are all talking about. Of course, if you make the system, the management system more efficient, that will add a little bit of efficient value and a little bit of reduction in the cost. But the major is in the generation sector. That's a different issue. And therefore, it will not solve our basic main problem, high electricity cost for consumers, industries, and service providers. And in the region, we will face more problems. I will not take more time, Shavi. Take on and carry on.
Okay, thank you very much, Amra. Now I'm going to another person, which is, you will recall that there were 14 petitions to the Supreme Court. And there were 12 determinations, if I remember correct, which were adopted in the Act. I'm sure this committee is not going to meddle with that. But the audience should know what those determinations in a very brief way, so that the discussion will not spread into an area where the Supreme Court has already decided on certain matters, which we cannot, I hope, will not change, should not change. And then we will go into two other interventions, and then I'll open for discussion. There's a structured discussion. So please hold on, keep your views and what you want to say, and our assistants will pick you up and let me know who is going to speak next. So next is Isuru Kasturatna, who had followed the entire process of the Supreme Court proceedings. And I invite him to say very briefly what those 12 determinations were of the Supreme Court.
Thank you very much, Engineer Shavi. And again, thank you to all of the presenters who did a very good job earlier. So I'll be much brief as much as possible. Given the time constraints, we should have a constructive dialogue afterwards as well. So going straight to the Supreme Court determination, there were 14 FR cases filed in the Supreme Court. And the judicial procedure conducted for 3 consecutive days. And ultimately, a 61-page long determination was provided. And with key 11 determination outlines, So the first one itself says the bill as a whole is inconsistent with Article 12.1, which is the equality of people under the Constitution. So that was what happened during the billing process, where the bill was presented to the Parliament and during the legislative process. So I'll go through one by one very briefly. The number one salient point is the enactment of the Act and the provisions regarding the appointed date and the prerequisites and all. So Supreme Court has decided that is a violation of the 12.1 in the Constitution, and they gave a way out saying that if you are going to do these corrections or the amendments to the Act, it can be passed with a simple majority. Before that, every amendment proposed by the Supreme Court to overcome the irregularities of the Act was accepted by the previous government, and those were incorporated. So there was no issue in that. So in general, when we are doing a review of the Act and doing these amendments, we have to respect that judicial verdict, and we have to carefully analyze if we are proposing any change to the Supreme Court determined clause, because like when it is already, the dispute is already resolved, when we are reassessing it, or we are going to address an amendment, so the determination outline or the inputs given by the Supreme Court better to be considered. That's an opinion. So coming back to the clause 1.2, so the Supreme Court suggested, or they directed the government to amend the clause number 1 as to include 4 prerequisites prior to the enactment of the Act. And as I noticed, there's a small misconception among everybody, almost everyone, saying that there's a deadline for us to move forward by 27th of June 2025. If you are not going to do anything, that will be automatically appointed, which is very incorrect. If you are referring to the Supreme Court decision and also to the Act, section 1.2 clearly says, as per the Supreme Court mandate, the minister shall be satisfied with the prerequisites, which are preliminary transfer plan, national electricity policy, and the annual procurement plan and long-term power system development plan, which are sequential but not in that order. And if even though the minister is not, even the minister is satisfied and about the prerequisites are met, and yet if he failed to publish a appointed date, the Act will be automatically appointed by the expiry of the 12 months. That is what Act is telling, because the decision is very clear. Without those 4 prerequisites, the Act cannot move forward. So that is the main point that I wanted to raise. So the other one is the NSO's chief executive officer. The bill was requesting for an administrative person to be the CEO, and Supreme Court said that no, there shall be an electrical engineer who has administrative experience. So they have proposed an amendment for that. That is the second one. The number 3 is a very important one for the sector and for the country. That is the procurements clause, section 11. The section 11, there was a way out for all unsolicited proposals, saying that the cabinet approvals are proceeding and the provisional approvals given by sustainable energy authorities are proceeding, and the letter of intents given by CEB are proceeding at the date of appointed date. That was the suggestion from the bill, but Supreme Court said no, it may be prevailing, but subjected to a competitive and transparent procurement process only. So that is a very major decision given by the Supreme Court in this regard. The 4th decision given by the Supreme Court is about the provident fund, the provision, the ownership of the companies. I beg your pardon, the ownership of the companies, because the Act was very silent about the ownership, other than the hydro company and 51% shares of NTNSP and the 100% government shares of NSO and the provident fund and pension fund. Others were open to privatization, or it was very open blank. So the Supreme Court mentioned that initially the share should be allotted with the Secretary to the Treasury until such time the government decided to divest the shares. So the ownership was clearly mentioned, and the allocation or the divesting of the share shall be with the approval of the Cabinet of the Ministers. So that was the amendment number 4. So the other one is the a key, and there's another part of the fourth directive from the Supreme Court. All the assets and liabilities, all the machinery, plants, and everything should be valued by the chief government valuer, not to transfer any asset to any successor company only through the book values, but everything should be thoroughly assessed and valued by the chief value of the government. So there is another special verdict given by the Supreme Court in this regard. So the fifth determination is about the Provident Fund of the CEB. And unfortunately, the concept paper, they have made a slight change to the company structure of the Schedule 1. I think it should be a mistake when they copy pasted the section. This part has been omitted in that section, and I think they have to revisit that part. The Supreme Court provided that the money is required to be in the Provident Fund obligation shall be included in that sentence. So that is the fifth Supreme Court determination given in this regard. The sixth one is about the transfer plan. So there were a lot of irregularities in this regard. So the Supreme Court made an intervention streamlining the time frame where the act comes to the bill comes to an act in the parliament where the speaker signs, and then how the sequential things should proceed in order, where especially regarding the preparation of the transfer plan and the assignation of employees to the successor companies, where the past deadline was 27th October, as many of you know. So that is the expiry of 4 months. So Supreme Court gave a verdict in this regard, saying that prior to the assignation letters issued, the government should provide employees with the VRS and the transfer plan for their review, and then only the employees are given 2 months period to inform the PSRS whether they are going to stay in the successor company or not. Likewise, so the time, the regularity of the time framework was corrected by the Supreme Court determination. So that is number 6. Number 7 is about the again about the employees of the CEB. It's about their terminal benefits. So some missing parts were added by the Supreme Court determination. Number 8 is reversing high political authority given from the bill, suggested by the bill, where the minister has given the authority deciding to issue a licensee to any license. For generation licensee, when there's a request for that, the ultimate authority was given to the minister to issue the license. So it said with the concurrence of the minister. So Supreme Court directed to remove that part from issuing a license. So the regulator was made independent in this regard from that verdict. Number 9 is about the PSRS. So the PSRS members' qualifications and their composition was a bit of a it was a bit unclear and unstructured. So they gave a clear verdict about the composition of the PSRS, about what sort of members should be in there with what qualifications. So that was in the 9th Supreme Court verdict. So number 10 was the Article 12 violation, and they did not even give a way out for that. So they totally deleted the clause 48, where the bill suggested to give the minister the power to do anything, in simpler terms, to do anything as it wants, to in the guise of correcting any mistake from the reform process. So he could do absolutely anything with that number 48 clause. So that was reversed, and that was deleted by the Supreme Court. The 11th determination is about the national grid. It's a very important one. So because the bill was suggesting that all 33 kV feeders or 33 kV and below feeders are not coming under or not belongs to the national grid. So then again, the question was raised about the controllability of the national grid of the NSO with the 33 kV connected power plants and other things as well. So with that regard, the Supreme Court gave a clear direction with the definition to be corrected as such as determined by the Supreme Court. So that is a significant verdict. And also they mandated to come into agreements between NSO and other licenses, not only the power purchasing agreement, but also operational agreements as well, especially between the National Transmission Network Service Provider and NSO as well. So those are the 11 verdicts given by the Supreme Court, which made this Electricity Act, what we have today, to an at least a better version than what was proposed to the bill. So thank you,
Thank you very much.
Engineer Shahid.
For economy of time, we'll go fast. I
Yes,
think
sir.
that presentation was important, but there are about 200 members in participation, and they should also be aware that this is the way the power sector will have to be reformed, even with the amendments. Now I go to another very special person who was the reform manager somewhere in the early 2000s, who was helped in the 2002 Act, and his views will also be important to shape our future way forward. And that will be Engineer Nihal Vikramasuriya. May I request him to make a very brief intervention about what he thinks about what they proposed in 2002 and what is being proposed in what is being amended, what is being proposed as amendments for the Act 36 of 2024. Over to you, Nihal. You can unmute and speak, please. Yeah, you are still muted.
Thank you very much, Engineer Shavi. I hope you can
We can hear you, yeah.
hear me. That's right. Thank you very much. And very briefly, of course, I had the opportunity of going through this concept paper, and I have a couple of issues, and one of the issues already touched by the Director General of Reform Secretariat, and other two issues has been touched already by Dr. Asanka Rodrigo. So I have they actually helped me to present my one is very short in a brief manner. So my first one is that the new structure proposed is suggesting 3 holding companies, although they are functional, but there's no sufficient reasons have been given in the document that why this particular holding companies have been proposed as additional companies to the already disintegrated successor companies. So the main reason why I am raising this one is when there is a holding company and there are subsidiary companies. Now, how the Public Utilities Commission is going to issue the licenses and who should be issued. Of course, that has been already answered by the Director General of the Secretariat, and he told just to this audience that the license will be issued to the successor companies and not to the holding company. That's good actually. That was my suggestion as well, because there was a problem when CB was holding several licenses for these regional distributions and generation and transmission. PUC had underwent, I think, a lot of difficulties in regulating the power sector. So I think taken care of that probably maybe that I think if you issue licenses to the functional companies, that will be helpful for the Public Utilities Commission to do their business properly. At the same time, my other issue is if that is the case, then why why we are establishing 3 holding companies. I don't know the reasons yet, and it has not been answered to date by the Secretariat. I think at the final remarks at least, the Secretariat would be able to answer why they are creating the holding companies over and above the successor companies, functional successors companies. The other point I wanted to highlight here is the discourse. The present disco arrangement has been studied in year 2000, and certain yardsticks were considered, and accordingly the demarcations were made. Contiguity, operational flexibilities, consumer ratios, ratio analysis, various things have been considered. But now it is already 25 years past for that exercise. And I think now that it is being again looked into, it may be an opportunity for the Secretariat to relook at it and see whether a fine tuning could be done. If that be the case, it will be helpful for the regulator to do his yardstick comparisons in the regulatory activities. So in all, that my request for the Secretariat is, it is always better to do Secretariat in consultation with the Public Utilities Commission, so that I think their issues and their findings could have been made use by the Secretariat to redemarcate not only the CEB regional distribution divisions, and also the LECO, because LECO is not a contiguity area. LECO is running in different parts and not even having a 33 kV network with them. They are having only 11 kV network and downwards. To make, I think, certain comparisons, it is good even the LECO is handed with certain 33 kV supply arrangement. It will be a convenient even for the consumers when in going to the technical operational matters. So this is my second question. The third one is about the appointment to the successor companies, the directors, and the monitoring of performance of the successor companies. Now, we always must try to, I think, accommodate the best practices, what we have learned in the past. In year 2002, when we first did the Electricity Reform Act, and which was passed in the Parliament, and it had the concept of introducing a monitoring and advisory committee to appoint the board of directors and remove the board of directors, and then to monitor the performance of the successor companies. And then the MAC main role is to recommend the minister. It's not the powers of the minister, it's the recommend to the minister that this is how the board of directors should be comprised with, and this is how their performances, and it is up to you to decide what to do with as a next step. So I think that kind of mechanism is well recognized in those days. I think that kind of a thing is very important, because that gives a very transparent mechanism to the minister to handle these specialized companies in a more, I think, productive manner, rather than it's not an administrative affair. So it is good that I think that kind of a mechanism brought in, and I hope that I was told when I talked to Mr. Ranil Vijayasinghe, who was the chairman of the Monitoring and Advisory Committee at that time, and he told me that he is going to participate for this particular forum today, and I am sure that he would be able to enlighten the audience and the other people about his experience when he was going through the monitoring advisory committee. The last point is
Sorry.
now the last point is the one that it's very important for the power sector reform secretariat. That is the day that when you disintegrate CEB into the successor companies, then all the companies will become state-owned companies, and in theory and legally, the entire ownership rests with the secretary to the treasury. So secretary to the treasury would be empowered to appoint board of directors to the successor companies. So in 2002, having recognized this situation, has been made proposals to the sector minister. The entire powers have been given to the minister in charge of the subject of power to appoint board of directors and remove the board of directors to the successor companies of the CEP. So that particular kind of provision, I would see it's absent at the proposed thing. So it is good that that kind of a thing to be taken back to the Minister of Power, and the introduction of the MAC back again to the power sector so that a productive arrangement could be established. Thank you very much, Shavi,
Thanks
for
a
the
lot.
opportunity.
I think your advice, your experience spoke out. Now we have, in fact, Ranil, we invited him to make an intervention. So I will not go to introduce him because he has a long CV. I'll not read his CV either. So most of you may know him. So I'll ask Ranil to make the intervention.
Thank you, Shavi. I hope I can be heard. Nihal, thank you for giving me a kind of an opener. So I'll go directly, Shavi, if you don't mind for that. It's regrettable, of course, that we, on the 15th of February last year at the CA Sri Lanka Auditorium, and subsequently in the months of March and April, we addressed these very same issues. The pity is that the Electricity Reform Act, the Electricity Act that was passed 2024, did not accommodate these concerns. What Nihal Vikramasuriya, who was the Secretary of the Power Sector Reform Committee, and my role there was as Chairman of the Monitoring and Advisory Committee, just for purposes of background, the Electricity Reform Act of 2002 provided for, among other things, the coming together of the CEB and LICO. I think I heard Nihal mention, why is LICO left out? I asked this question again at the Dominic Correa Foundation session as well. So I'm just wondering why, if the whole idea of this reform is to collapse the existing entities, unbundle, create successor companies, make those companies registered under the Companies Act, and ensure that the boards of directors of those are selected in a manner that is not based on ministerial or political influence. So now, what is important is that the Monitoring and Advisory Committee provided for in the Electricity Reform Act of 2002 was in itself not a minister's committee. The Act in 2002 clearly provided for a nominee of the Institute of Engineers, who was the then chairman of LICO, I think, a nominee of the Ceylon Chamber, nominee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Deputy Secretary Treasury, a nominee of the Minister of Consumer Affairs and Consumer Protection, and there were many such nominees. And the Monitoring Advisory Committee's task was to support the unbundling process and to ensure that every successor company had a board of directors comprised of directors nominated by the MAC and not based on the minister's appointment. So a strong MAC that we were, I think, we worked totally pro bono for about 10 months until Mr. Vikram Singh was sacked and the government folded up. And this reform was put on the shelf until 2009. Now, what did we do in this interim period? We studied the reforms, bringing in the World Bank and ADB or whoever was part of the process that started apparently during the CBK regime. Karu Jayasuriya inherited it and took it forward. I recall because I worked very closely with him. There was a provision in that act which said that no successor company, the Secretary Treasury shall not divest any part of a successor company otherwise than through the approval of Parliament. That is, I think, how he got the current government's persons who were detractors in a way to agree to the reform. So the successor companies are bringing LECO and CB together. I would say, Shavi, you might like to take this further. Why not bring LECO back into the system to redistribute? As Nihal said, LECO or the discos were identified based on a variety of criteria, not based on geographies. So I've been asked that question before. So one of the most important things I would say is, why can't we bring LECO back and redistribute based on that? Secondly, the purpose of MAC was that we have to nominate directors. What I, together with my committee, did, we studied the New Zealand reforms. We did not advertise, but we invited every association of relevance, chambers, engineering associations, OPA membership, and we got a large number of resumes, which we as a committee looked into. I interviewed several of them. We ensured that every company, for example, Genco, had civil engineers. Every company had 7 directors minimum, but they were comprised of respected, qualified, experienced electrical engineers, civil engineers, electronics engineers, lawyers, accountants, and so forth. We identified from among 100 applications we got 70 directors. We gave that over to the minister. The minister did not add one name. Minister did not delete one name. I'm going to be very open. The additional secretary who was also on our committee under the MAC that is provided for that, he also is on the committee. He told me, Mr. Chairman, one of those members is a JVP person. I said, look, we are recruiting not JVP, NPP, UNP, or SLFP people, but we are recruiting engineers. He then squealed to the minister, and Mr. Karu Jayasuriya can view this. He told me in front of them, I will submit the entirety of these 70 or 80 directors. And he did so to the Prime Minister. And mind you, even the Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, did not add or remove a single. Regrettably, that didn't proceed. So what I want to tell very quickly is, Shavi, that I want to, if we are talking about reform, and if the end game of reform of the electricity sector is unbundling, how will that holding company concept enable or disenable what is called proper unbundling? We are talking about an integrated, monopolistic, state-owned enterprise. No offense to anybody there. There are some excellent people within CB. But why are we trying to, in some way or the other, with this committee stage, this special committee amendments, perpetuate what even the existing 2024 Act provides for them? Why are we creating holding companies? What is the end game of that? And secondly, I think, Nihal, you might like to elaborate on this later on, but I am confident that the Electricity Reform Act of 2002 clearly had a transition plan. I think it even provided for, if ISRO is there, valuation of assets. People who identified where they go, which successor company they go. There was no doubt or second guessing. Why can't that? Why have we thrown it out with the out? That has to be brought back. So I think one of the speakers at the very beginning spoke about, or Professor Asanka Rodrigo. I think I must congratulate him. He touched on a number of areas that we've touched on over the last 12 months. And thank you for that. What we want is not simply a consumer friendly, as he said, or a country friendly. We want a consumer responsive, sustainable CB. We don't want a regulator or a government to drop tariffs such that the CB will not be able to sustain it. We want a consistent, sustainable tariff. So therefore, I'm very concerned that we may perpetuate mediocrity, if there is any element of mediocrity, or doubts about procurement, are we going to perpetuate them? Why create these holding companies? As far as the successor companies are concerned, I wonder where in this act or in the proposed committee proposed provisions, is there a nomination committee to identify eligible, based on eligibility criteria, who will be on the board of the successor companies? There is no purpose in having a successor company. There's no purpose in unbundling if those companies are going to be resourced as a board of directors with people who may not be suitable. So why there? Now, I'm also unsure why we have to take Genco and club it with hydro and wind and all that. Why can't each of these be standalone companies? Nihal was speaking about licensing a holding company and clarified that it wasn't the question of licensing a holding company does arise. The regulator will provide a license for a particular generation company. So the hydro generation is separate, right, Chavi? The wind power is separate. So if these are separate licensees, why are we having this? If we are worried, and I think there was some union pressure even when we discussed this 1 year ago, that the unbundling and the successor company creation may lead to some gray areas with regard to where people go. I would urge you as IESL to call for that plan that Nihal says was there. Now, the monitoring and advisory committee, I'm not suggesting even for a moment, even though we were quite wedded to that MAC in 2003-4, I'm not saying replicate. I'm only saying take the good components of it. One, independent selection of directors. The minister shall not appoint or remove any director unless otherwise than through the recommendation of the MAC. Secondly, the role of the MAC was to entertain a statement of corporate intent from the successor. Where is that? Then, if that is not there, and we were talking about a NEAC, which I was very disappointed with, I'm happy it's being removed. But what is it going to be replaced by? The National Electricity Advisory Council had appointees only from the minister. I'm surprised that 23 years after that 2002 Act, which provided for openness and transparency and absence of political interference at the appointment level and operational level, 25 years later, we are bringing that in. To me, that is going back in time. It's laughable. And I can't understand how legislators in the parliament have not studied that original legislation before they have put their hands up and pass it. So now there are some who might think that there is a need for a sunset clause, let the holding company be there and wither away. I quite frankly, I'm not too sure whether that is necessary unless the transition plan is not as robust and enforceable from a human resource and other legal standpoint. I'm also going to say that lots of people believe in this holding company concept, trying to emulate Singapore's Temasek model for even other areas. I'm totally against that concept. I believe that even the Ranil Wickremesinghe government was considering that at one stage. Singapore, it may work, but the Temasek model is not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at flexibility for any entity that requires to be divested, to be treated sectorally and separate. So I would venture out to comment on the Temasek model because this holding company concept is not something I identified. Then how sure are we going to be about the robustness, the fairness, the justice and equity, appropriateness from an investor perspective, government owned maybe, of the generation mix? The national system operator is going to be doing the procurement. I like to see how robust, open, transparent, independent, and objective that's going to be. I'm not too convinced, particularly if you are going to have 100% NSO or government owned, and also in a transition period, what could have been a better transition period, the holding company concept. I also must say, if I may, if you don't mind taking a little time, this question of the 2002 Act, when it was replaced in 2009, they brought in this G2G thing. I only hope that nowhere in any legislation of any kind is that cop-out called the G2G. Even today, very senior professionals have told me, India will figure out another way of taking out. Bunkum. No government of its kind should engage with us as a government if the deal is unfair. And using that, I'm going to also say that if Haley is a company that is listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange, if they are not well governed, well, people won't buy their shares. And the Securities and Exchange Commission, Colombo Stock Exchange, will come after them, right? So I want to propose something that I proposed to Ranil Wickremesinghe in the early 90s, the Thai model, which is called MTS, Minimum Thai Shareholding. Why can't we in some way introduce our corporates today are 30, 40 years later, or how much? 50 years after, almost 50 years after opening the economy. I can assure you there are companies, why would the no funds and all these institutions buy the shares of some of our resilient corporates? Well governed. Why can't they be given the right of first refusal in our country to be given additional marks to be bidding for and winning? Whether it's thermal or whether it's wind or whether it's ocean energy or no matter what it is. So given that we have precedent where Haley's has outshone others, people may talk about economies of scale, but I believe that's something to be considered, and that will be politically a popular thing for the current government. I'm also not too sure how the costs of the Mahabali feeding into the hydropower system, that is not accounted for. We have to maintain dams, and I'm not too sure whether that is happening. I also noticed that the committee has referred to amending a lot of objects. That is old-fashioned. Today, even the Companies Act doesn't go to elaborate on whether you can buy a ship or whether you can buy a plane or whether you can build a road. An object is an object. The stated purpose of Electricity Act is that. So, consumer protection, I want a stronger approach to that. I'm not too sure whether the regulatory independence is there. We had a previous government, an aware government, a UNP government. Yes, the regulators and individual is not good or whatever, it's a different matter. But you don't trifle with a regulator. I have been on 3 regulatory bodies. I was chairman of the SEC. I would not permit any government to trifle with what is provided for the independence. So I'm not too sure whether all this, whether we are considering a proper, robust, independent regulator. Why do I say that? We have raised the tariff up and up and up. Then we have brought it down and down and down. There's some of the view that the current tariff reduction may not enable the CEB to be sustained. I'm not too convinced. I would like the PUCS people to quite explain how that reduction happened. So there's a lot more I can say, but I will close there with one last comment. I would like to see a stronger internal, external audit within the institutions of all of these institutions. And I want to bring in a concept that I had mentioned many years ago, even internationally, but it has not caught on. I would like to introduce the concept what I call a regulatory scope coverage effectiveness audit. The PUCSL also should be audited to ensure that they are performing their regulatory functions as provided for in the law. With that, I'll close and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Ranil. Yeah, you said a mouthful. Anyway, yeah. Experience speaking. Anyway, now I am going to open for the much awaited discussion. I was planning to go on a scheme of structured discussion. If I do that, I may miss out on the people who would like to say certain things. So I kindly request you to raise your hand, and only Zara is there to help me with the people who are going to raise their hands. And we'll take one by one. At the moment, I have been told that's an intention by Mr. W.A.L.W.A. Pereira to speak. And there was an intention of one Buddhika Vijayawardena to speak. There was an intention by Tarindu De Silva to speak. There's an intention by Tilda Gului to speak. I'll stop at that. At least if these people are there, let me ask Mr. Pereira, if he's there, to unmute himself and speak. Mr. Pereira, are you there? WALW Pereira, Amarasiri Pereira. Are you there? Then, until Mr. Pereira comes online, can I ask Mr. Buddhiko Jivardhan to speak? Please speak quick, because we need to catch up on the time and wind up at 8 o'clock. That's 45 minutes left. And I need to give Pubudu at least 10 to 15 minutes. So be mindful of that. And Buddhika, please speak up if you are there. Tarindu, please speak up if you are there, because we need your inputs. Raise their hands or whatever. But you're not going to control their unmuting, right? Are you? Yeah. Please raise your hand and then she will unmute you. Zara is there to unmute you. Please raise your hands. Mr. WLW Pereira, Amasiri Pereira, Buddhika Vijayawardena, Tarindu De Silva, Tilda Gulita, Sivaharan, and Stombage. They are requested to speak. Is anyone there? Please raise your hand and she will unmute you. Tilda Gulita speaks. Yeah. And make it 2 minutes. Huh? Participants cannot unmute. We are aware. Please raise your hand. We'll unmute you. Yeah. So now you unmute yourself, please.
Hi.
Yeah, you are technical teacher, right?
Hello, sir. Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, who is there, please?
Yeah. So like I asked the question, I think Mr. Nihal and even Dr. Sankar Rodrigo even raised some similar questions. So the role of the holding companies were unclear, and we need to clarify those things. And the requirement for having a holding company. And like Dr. Tilak once said, I think a year ago or something like that, if it's just an expansion of the number of directors or the number of director boards or new designations, likewise, this will be a waste of time and money. So if someone can clearly define the role of a holding company, that would be nice. Thank you.
Why holding company, that have been raised before. Now, Mr. Pereira, Mr. Buddhika Vijayawardena, Tarindu De Silva, Sivaharan, and Dompage. After that, we have a participant here who want to say something. If none of you are raising your hands, I'm going to give over. Is there anybody? Tarindu is there. Please, Tarindu. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Engineer Savi. Hope I'm audible enough to the audience.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Since from its inception, Lanka has always had the support of guidance of our parent company, the CEB.
Please unmute. Please unmute. You have to unmute.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, right. Thank you, Engineer. And that connection itself gave us a lot of stability in helping us handle policy and technical level challenges smoothly. But going forward, the things are going to change with the reforms of the sector. So with CEB unbundling and segregating its financial centers, cost will be now directly passed on to the each distribution company, including us. So which is a good thing in terms of the accountability and transparency.
When you say us, you mean LECO, right?
LECO, exactly. Sorry, I'm representing LECO, and I'm just representing my personal opinions other than the official LECO comments for the reforms. But anyway, from what I have seen in this reform proposals, Engineer Shavi, it looks like we are taking a gradual, step-by-step approach rather than making drastic changes that could throw into the whole sector into chaos. So I think that's the right way to go. However, I noticed that LECO has been, unfortunately, has not been mentioned anywhere in the Act, even though the 50% of our shares are held by CEB. I'm sure that this might, I'm pretty much sure that this might seem like a just operational or administrative issue, but leaving it out could cause problems in later on. So in my personal opinion, I think LECO can be seen as a successful case study for reforming the electricity distribution sector. This isn't just my personal fancy, but it's sentiment shared by the other many professionals and donor agencies. So we need to preserve and maintain the same operational model that has allowed LECO to thrive under this existing scheme. and the system. I'm hopeful that the reforms will not only preserve this model, but also recognize LECO as a sort of a blueprint for the future for new companies that will going to be formed. So my suggestion is to include LECO in the act, and ideally with the same provision as the other distribution companies, rather than leaving it alone and which can be rest in unknown hand. So I hope that it will help to avoid confusion and keep everything in sync with the rest of the reforms. So that a government or the distribution holding company can decide where it will be land depending on the government policy. And further, another note on some might argue that the operational efficiency can be gained or the bringing in private sector participation, which is there's no doubt about that. I'm 100% into it. However, our experience so far had been limited with a traditional or the vertical integrated giant like CEB. So we have never really operated under a model where CEB is unbundled and each and every licensee has full independent operational authority, or the accountability, or the whatever the transparency and expected internal and external audits some gentlemen previously mentioned. So while it's important for us to explore the way to involve how private sector participant can bring into the sector, we also need to give each and every licensee to chance to operate independently and evaluate how far we can improve the efficiency on their own. So instead of sitting back and hoping that some private sector hero will come and magically fix the system, we should we should take the control and see what we can bring in through the reforms to achieve these operational efficiencies to each and every distribution licensees. So with that, I'll conclude my brief remarks. So I don't want to LECO sing an idling throughout this act. Thank you very much, Injinia.
Much, Tarindu. Now, next I'll hand over to Mr. Somaratna, who is in this room. Unfortunately, he doesn't want to come to the camera, but it's all yours. Mr. Somaratna.
Thanks, Shavi. Actually, I have only one simple question. Now, in that particular diagram where they showed how our power sector would be structured, I saw they were talking about hydro. Then they were talking about wind.
May I know if he's audible? Is he heard, right?
That second person. Yeah. In that sketch, they were talking about hydro and they were talking about wind. But they were not talking anything about solar. I am not surprised because when Ranil Wickramasinghe presented his climate prosperity plan, it did not talk about solar. It talked only about wind energy. So does this mean that we are going to forget solar energy for the rest of our future? That's my simple question.
Okay, that will be taken note of, right? Anyone else who has, there are a few people who wanted to speak. That is Buddhika Vijayavardhana, Mr. W.L.W. Pereira, Sivaharan, and Mr. Dompage. Are you all there? Otherwise, I'll have to ask Mr. Ranjit Tabru. Sorry. Mr. Dompage, can you please, Mr. Ranjit Tabru, please. Ranjit, it's all yours.
Can you
We can hear you. We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
The setting up the holding company with 70-member director board looks very unrealistic. If at all a holding company has to be set up, it should be a short term, 6 months to 12 months, so that you can bring in the operators into the action. Then also the national system operators should be, in my personal view, it shouldn't be an independent group. It should be under the ministry and not independent. I think Hiroshan was mentioning about renewable energy, coal and thermal, but did not touch, as the previous speaker mentioned, the hydro. Hydro generates a substantial amount of power in this country and is the cheapest. So where does that stand? Is it going to be managed by a single authority? And also, how do you propose to unbundle the existing system? Are you going to auction the assets of each of those units and then sell it to the highest bidder? There's no mention how you're going to appoint people. Are they by just nomination where the government carries this responsibility? then it will be no different to what the CB has been doing actually. Then also I want to know whether there will be provision for the current CB engineers and the staff to set up management buyouts so that they themselves can form companies and bid for these assets actually in different forms. Some can be on maybe the generation may be difficult for them, but the transmission and the distribution can easily be done by our own engineers. And also some concessions to pay over, you can allow them a concession so that if it is our local engineers, you pay the assets over a certain number of years. So would like some response from Mr. Niroshan, if possible.
He has
Thank
agreed to respond to all these questions at the end. Then still I have Uddika Sivaharan Dompage, right?
Yeah. Can I speak, Mr. Shamindranath?
Who's speaking there?
I'm Dompage.
Yeah, you are audible and please go ahead.
Yeah. So I thank you very much for this waking up the engineers regarding this very important topic, the reforms. So my question, I had two questions, but one is already asked by Tilina, but I don't know to take much time on that. But regarding these holding companies, as we understand, the licenses are given to the subsidiary companies of these holding companies. So the subsidiary is the one who is responsible for the conditions in the licensee. But when the holding company ownership trying to go beyond the desire of the residual company's ownership, then what will happen? Because last time with the present system, CEB is holding the licenses and it's a one single company. But now holding company has a different board of directors. They have the holding sharing on that their subsidiaries, but subsidiaries are responsible for the licensees conditions. So what will happen if there is a mismatch between these two? So that is one question. And the second question is, in this the format given in with the amendments to the present present act, of course, there are some clauses are deleted in the proposal. So now the Supreme Court judgment is not the law now, but the act is law. When you change or amend one of the clauses in the act, suppose, for example, now the section 18(3)(e)(2) is to be deleted, but very clearly that clause was put into the act because of the Supreme Court judgment. So have you considered any legal implication on removing such a clause? So those two are my questions. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Mr. YB Mutsava has been raising his hand since a long time. So I would like to give him this opportunity. Mr. YB Mustafa, would you like to speak? Okay, then I will give the opportunity to the next person who has been raising the hand since a few minutes. Mr. B.R.O. Fernando.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm audible. This is Mustafa here.
Yes, Mr. Mustafa, you are audible.
Yeah, actually, I'm not into the power sector. Actually, basically, I'm an industrial engineer. I'm working out of Sri Lanka. I would like to, I've seen all of your presentation and all of your talk, and I understand that the restructuring and additions of director board and increasing the costs here. Okay. And my question is here, all of these restructuring and changing this act or the amendment of this act, how much it is going to bring the efficiency of CEB and how much it is going to enhance the the quality of the services and how much it is going to reduce the cost of power. Because in 2016 I came with one of my Korean friend and we stopped one of the industry was running in Kochikade in Igambu in Korean industry, and we move out of Sri Lanka. Okay, now the present situation in the world, that the announcement by the US President Donald Trump, and he imposed the tariff on some certain bigger industrial countries, which will open the door for country like Sri Lanka to facilitate many countries for the manufacturing facilities. But I think, Sri Lanka is not in the position to, facilitate because of shortage of power. Okay. And my personal advice, because, since I'm like a 30, 35 years experience in industrial sector, the Sri Lanka, whatever the amendment, whatever the changes they are going to do, it has to boost to develop our economy of the country. Otherwise, it is waste of time and waste of money, I believe that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will take next opportunity. I would like to give to Mr. Biaro Fernando.
Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
What I want to know is now there are going to be a number of distribution companies. Now, in what manner will their tariff be done? Will the tariff differ from one company to the one distribution company to the other? In which case, will it be possible for a customer to go to a distribution company which is as a tariff less of a lesser amount? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Your question is noted. So we'll move on to the next question from Mr. Rahman.
Yeah. Thank you. Hope I am audible. My question is related to the generation companies and how that will be function in future. Like, will there be a power purchase agreement with new generation companies and the NSO? Or that is my question. Will they operate like as IPP?
Thank you very much. So I think all of these questions will be taken by our research panels. And next, I would like to move to Mr. Sivakaran. Mr. Sivakaran, please. Yes.
Yes, good evening. I'm Sivakaran. I have 3 points to make. The first is, up to now, we are continuing with the uniform national tariff. So the purpose of dividing into successor companies is to increase the efficiency. So in my opinion, if we have the uniform national tariff, that will not motivate the successor companies to improve their efficiency. The second one is, I am bringing to your attention the Schedule 2 of the Act, which was earlier under the 2009 Act as Schedule 1. This has provisions for the distribution licensees to do to maintain the safety clearance. We need to clear the trees and other obstacles. So in the 2009 Act was amended in 2013 to allow 7 days for the notice for the tree clearing. But in 2024, it was again increased to 21 days, I think, which is not operationally efficient. So it is under the part 6 of the Schedule 2. So the third item I want to bring here is the street light energy charges. So for last few years, the street light was not a free one by the PCSL tariff decision, and it was to be charged from the local authorities. So regarding this matter, we recently have an issue in the northern part of the country where the local authorities are demanding taxes or rates for the electricity poles planted by the distribution licensees, because they say the local authorities legislation is having provision to get approval for the distribution licensees. But under the Electricity Act, it is not the case. So some more clarification is expected in the future act regarding the local authority permission for distribution lines. Thank you for giving the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Sivaran. You raised some micro but important issues. Anyone else who is raising their hands? Otherwise, we can start winding up the business. Mr. Pereira was wanting to speak and he's not there, right? I saw Mr. B.R. Fernando had raised his hand, right? Is Mr. B.R. Fernando available? Yeah, then we have unmuted Mr. B.R. Fernando. He has a question. I'm sorry. Anyone else?
Can I speak to?
Yeah, I think Ranil wants to make it. Yeah, please.
Well, I think Professor Asankar Rodrigo quite rightly asked the question. He asked several very important questions. But this question of the 10 megawatt and 1 megawatt. Sorry. Right. Professor Asankar Rodrigo inquired why the 10 megawatt had been raised to 1 megawatt. There are lots of, naturally, there are lots of people who are pro-renewables who are quite disturbed about that. So what is the rationale for that is something that the committee who proposed this, even I believe that let the 10 megawatt be. Why limit it? I mean, why change that? So there has to be a compelling reason for that change. And particularly, as he said quite rightly, in an act, you don't specify things like that. So that's something that I would like you to take on board.
Perhaps Anurag Jayapala shed some light on this. There may have been a bit of misunderstanding. Even SPPA is standard, right? But the bidding has to be there, even up to 10 megawatts. So then still they can come under the SPPA. That's what sort of Anurag was trying to get at. Anyway, we'll leave it to the committee, but I think there's a couple of other people who have raised their hands. Mr. Atula Banyarachi has raised his hand. Is he going to speak? Yeah, okay.
Yes. A quick question. Now, in future, with the new Electricity Act, there will be only competitive bidding. That is good, very good. But on the other hand, now, these days, CB is focusing on this pump hydro system. It's a huge investment for a company, private party. How do we allow, I mean, in future, hydro company will be allowed to construct such a thing, or NSO will all bids as usual for this kind of thing? Thank you.
All these questions will be noted, and we will see how it can be handled. If there are no more questions, it's my pleasure to invite once again Pubudu Niroshan. And before going to Pubudu, would Asanka like to make a small intervention? Pubudu has a huge task to address, but before that, I need to also ask Asanka, would you like to say something at the moment?
No, Mr. Shavi, I think all the members, what they have raised are valid questions. I think committee, rather than me answering, I think the Pubudu and the committee can answer those questions. So how they are going to incorporate whatever the questions raised by the members. One thing I want to highlight that there was a question about the solar, why the solar is not considered in that one, only hydro and wind. It is because at the moment CEB does not have any solar power plant. So that because of that, the solar asset is not there to make a company. So that's why only assets what they have is the wind and hydro. So there was a question from the audience, so that I want to clarify that one. Other things I will leave to the Pubudu, so that the Pubudu can clarify whatever the questions or the clarification raised by the members.
So to Pubudu.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, one by one I will go through. If I miss anything, Sarah can help me. Yeah, this is a nice way, right? This is a two-way communication. This is what we missed during the last attempt. The stakeholder consultation mean that this two-way process has to be implemented. It is not a one-way, just getting some meeting and asking something from stakeholders or whatever the public, and do what you want with the mandate or the power at the parliament. So this is very nice and good initiative done by ISL. Thanks again to the ISL, and I hope other institutions and the stakeholders can take this as opportunity. We have time till 14th for the concept paper, and same time until we are going through the draft in the bill again, we can have another round of sessions as well. Then one by one I will clear. I will share it again, my screen. Sarah, you all can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes, we can see your screen.
Yes.
Make it
The idea behind this restructuring, that first of all, we have to see why we are going to amend the act. So we have a act passed at the parliament, effected by last year 27th June. Now we are talking about the amendment. So first of all, most of the questions can be answered within that answer to the first question, why we are going to amend the act. The current sections and the current subsection and some paras and the provisions of the existing current act violate the objectives set by the same act. So act itself, the sections itself violate their own objectives set by the first provision. One by one we can go, but easily you can go through the objectives. One of the consultant here mentioned that once objects are set, those are the objects to be governed throughout the entire act during the execution and the implementation process, and also the time period where the act is a law. But certain the misunderstanding behind that logic is that the public mandate is given to a government, that government energy policy should have been reflected in the whatever the law. For example, if you go through the objectives, one of the objectives of the current act, it's very clear in the one of the objective has set to let's say promote and facilitate establishment and functioning of the wholesale electricity market. So if we going through that particular reference, section 2C as a object. So what is the object given in the act? To promote, facilitate and establishment and functioning of a wholesale market. So here very clearly this act and the law has identified this our current strong or weak single buyer model has to be transformed to a wholesale electricity market. So we know, or we all know, that there are 4 different types of main market models. So here one set of people has already identified the way to transform the market. That is one example. Then the second example, the terminologies. So when we set an objective, that is the number one. Number one, the objective of doing something. Otherwise, we don't want to do that. So let's say section number 2G, right? So here they mention about some dangers arising from generation, transmission, and distribution plus plus. So what are the dangers, right? The terminologies. When we are going for an act, that is why I already mentioned 1969 Act is an act. It's an industry act. What we are having on our hand, 2024 Act is not an industry act. It is a kind of a transition act, reform act. That is why that PSRS sections are mentioned there. That section number 38 and 39 are mentioned there. What will happen to PSRS after this 2 years transition period? So all these sections are not valid anymore, right? So objects should have been set years to a last long period according to the national energy policy. It is not a government energy policy. It is government energy policy framework. Any party, any person, any society, any company can have kind of a framework. But once it is called national, once it is framed to a national energy policy, it has to be go through a wider, genuine stakeholder consultation. So what we have in our gazette, gazetted under the parliament, it's not an act, but we have a national energy policy. Many of the seniors here who have contributed to that national energy policy from, I think, before 2008 even, by 2008 they have organized as a started in a kind of a organized manner. In 2019, under that government, it has been gazetted by the parliament and published as a national energy policy. National energy policy itself mentioned that policy has to be reviewed every 6 years, and that delivery framework has to be reviewed every 2 years. But we know after that initial policy, nothing has been happened. So that is why national energy policy, it is not a kind of a party policy. That national energy policy, what is gazetted here also, it is done by several stakeholders, professionals, university academics, and these company owners, industrialists, everybody get together has done a tremendous job, and they have finalized a kind of a national energy policy. So that is why we need to review these objectives to a certain way, that national energy policy should have been addressed in the all, not only electricity, all industry acts. It's not about energy, including that petroleum. Let's say if you go to atomic energy, so that we are talking about some missing buses. Let's go to coal, LNG. So then future this hydrogen. Any industry has to be addressed and under through the policies gazetted and consulted throughout the stakeholders in a national level. So that is why we want this objective to be amended. Some objectives can be quantified, some are qualitative measures. I think Dr. Asanka mentioned about some 2 parameters in let's say one is convenient, then one is clean. So some parameters are qualitative, not quantitative. We can discuss in detail, but considering the time restriction, I will note that some objectives are qualitative, some are quantitative. Then the main point, then the most of the arguments are on the number of companies. So here, let's say if we name it as a parent company, if we name it as a holding company, I know that different kind of that perspective can be given by different set of people. But what we need is a complete unbundling, generation, transmission, and distribution. To do that unbundling, just forget this holding company concept for a moment. To do a kind of a 100% unbundling, minimum we need 3 companies. Those are the main 3 companies: generation company, transmission company, and the third is the distribution company. Just forget all these subsidiary companies for a moment. I will come back to those, the logic behind these subsidiary companies. So if we consider this first row for a moment, number 1 is a generation company, number 2 is a transmission company, number 3 is a distribution company. One particular question asked about this, why we are missing about solar. The answer is already given by Dr. Asankar. We don't have solar power plants or solar power division or whatever under CEB. So this is that is what we have discussed from Tarendu also, I think from LECO mentioned why LECO is missing. Here we talk about reforms are mandatory, and it is mandatory to do not only to CEB, it should have been done to the entire electricity sector, including all the other companies under Ministry of Energy. It includes utilities, it should include this regulator business, and also it should address this petroleum and atomic energy plus other SCA plus other companies as well, institutes as well. Here, the particular act schedule number 1 is only about restructuring of CEB. That is why we have to amend that section number 1, schedule 1. Schedule 1 we have to amend. It is only about CEB. That is why all these other 12 companies mentioned under schedule 1 has been reviewed and restructured according to this slide shown as 5 main companies. Then NSO, as it is under this single buyer model, we have to go ahead with NSO. It is the National System Operator Licensee. I don't think that anyone has a doubt on that particular fourth company. Fifth company, I think Mr. Dompage raised about section 18(3)(e)(2). So it is a kind of a Supreme Court determination, right? So the reason behind that deletion of that particular section is due to when we refer that particular clause, section 18(3)(e)(2), you can see that clause, that section has been introduced to the existing act to allocate the company or companies under section 17 to introduce not only that fund, to introduce that other residual assets and the liabilities, duties and function of the remaining staff of CEB to another particular company. It is not only about the fund. So all these other assets and liabilities, duties and function of the remaining staff. What is the remaining staff? Once we categorize all these opposite of that remaining, right? So those are the popular staff. Those are the key staff. Those are not the remaining staff. So one of the logic behind this restructuring process that due to many political reasons might be there are excess labor, excess engineers, might be excess other categories of staff as well. 23,000 or 26,000 we can count, we can argue the number is more than the required number. But all these staff members and the employees are now, they are the main income, their family or whatever they are, the day-to-day life is totally depend on this entity. So one of the main key aspect considered under this restructuring attempt is the human factor. So some can say that by 27th October last year, that the PSRS has to, with CB, has to issue some letter for that proposal of the successive companies to be assigned to all the employees. But within that whatever 4-month period, no company has been incorporated by the previous administration. You know the history. So without a company, we can't allocate all these employees. Some can argue that without a company name, since it is mentioned in schedule number 1, we can assign. But as considering this people-centric energy transition and as considering human factor as a factor, key factor, we are not into that one. That is why we took a time and we have proposed this restructuring model. Then we are considering to go ahead with the transfer plan. On that 18(3)(e)(2), if you refer that particular section on the provident fund and the pension fund and the other two provisions, you can see under section 18(3)(a) that section 18(3)(a) also amended. So it is initially it's a one, I think one para, it's very 3-line section. So we have amended that one with the inclusion of that remaining provisions from the 18(3)(e). The main reason for deletion of some sections under 18, deletion of the section 18 is due to that some clubbing and inclusion of that particular contents into the some other initial sections. The reason is that section 17 is belongs to this incorporation of limited companies. So since the company structuring is changed under schedule number 1, section number 17 and section number 18 has to be amended. But the content on particular sections which is governed by the Supreme Court determinations are not deleted. Those are included in some other previous these sections, right? Then the number of companies, I heard that it is kind of misinterpreted at the last by some other consultants. There are no 70-member holding companies, right? So the holding company concept is coming. So due to particular reasons, the reason is like this. So we all agree that restructuring is towards 100% unbundling. So minimum 3 companies should have been there: generation, transmission, distribution. Then all these subsidiaries, the sub companies, has to be considered in a kind of a 3 separate featured manner, not in a bunch, right? So one by one we'll go. Then again, section 18.3a or 18.3e2, it is mentioned about a residual company, residual function, so other services, whatever, this unpopular excess labor related company. So it is kind of a company after restructured, after unbundled, the excess labor or this additional kind of services are clubbed together, and it is not under this government ownership as well initially, yes, but after that we don't know the future or the functionality of that particular company. So we are thinking this model in a different way. We identified digital as a government policy, digitalization, digital, whatever the IT services, for example, all these DD1 to DD4 distribution divisions and a transmission division, they are using CB on softwares, CB on apps. So whatever available these apps are done by CB, this digital or this IT division. Some might have been outsourced, but under IT division. Then at the first day, within CB, all these divisions are taking this particular service from IT division. Then number 2, this training. CB has a set up the training division, Piliyandala, and some are in this hydro generation areas as well. That training center. And second, TCP-like divisions, transmission, construction, project-like divisions. So CB has their own value-added services. So those are not residual services. So we don't like that word at first place. So all these value-added services, for example, some has mentioned about Haleys, some can mention about LTL. So that the initiation of LTL projects, you all know that seniors know. Then some can mention about the private companies. All these private companies are such a manner supported by the initial, this government-owned entity. So all these services, value-added services, are clubbed together under services company. Yeah, true that in this concept paper, it is not mentioned. That some can argue that structure of these director boards are not mentioned and the criteria is not mentioned. But first of all, we need to have a consultation with the audience and the stakeholders about the restructured this setup, or rather restructured model. So some can say this transmission and distribution can be a one company, not to separate. Some can argue that generation and disco, we can have a kind of in a manner that since distribution are regional divided, some distribution companies can be sign up with major power plants, generation companies, subsidiary companies. Some can argue on certain setup of restructuring models. So that is why we didn't mention this criteria or this proposed directorship models, the number of directors. It is coming under the second stage. Once this restructuring model is accepted by the stakeholders in a wider manner, so we can go into the detail of the director models and the criteria of the selection of the directors. And again, this logic behind these subsidiary companies and the sub companies can be elaborated one by one in a phased manner. I will go to this transmission company. As I explained, this service component, service company are belong to those residual functions mentioned in the current act. So it is very clear. Now let's assume that services company mentioned here is not available. Then there are only 2 companies, transmission company and NTNSP. So there's no need of NTNSP to be separated. So we can give the NTNSP, this transmission network service provider licensee, directly to the transmission company. Now you all can visualize, now you all recognize the importance of the inclusion of the transmission company at the first place. Inclusion of the services company under a transmission company is the reason behind these three separate companies under this subsegment transmission. If there's no services company, yes, it is not. Here there are three companies. If we remove this service company as it is in the current act, no need to separate between transmission company and NTNSP. It is very simple. So that is the logic behind. Some can say there are three companies, three separate companies. Some can argue that one additional transmission company has been introduced due to this reason. But we have to recognize that residual function, we put a high value on that residual services is mentioned in the current act as key services under this coming amendment. So that is why the reason behind the three companies in transmission company segment. Then when we move into the DD1 to DD4 about 4 companies subsidiaries, the reason is this. Unfortunately or fortunately, I think Mr. Nihal mentioned, I think, that these divisions are regionally divided. So no division or no consumer can be taken services from two distribution licenses. So if you have any unsatisfactory or any, if you are not happy with your whatever the division, you don't have any provision to take from another distribution company or disco. That is number one. Number two, in the current act, there's nothing mentioned about the retail market. So we will talk about the retail market under NSO. We can make the guideline, but certain measures we have to be it has to be taken by NSO. Then only we can go for retail markets. In that concept, we can argue that a LECO can be merged with this distribution company, main company. I have seen some argument on that as well. LECO is a separate company, but it has kind of a different terrain, different geographical area. Having said that, now just look at the first 4 distribution company. At the beginning, since we don't have that separate, we don't have a separate or additional distribution licenses to particular one area, we need kind of a transition period at the beginning to all these discos to be, at least to levelize like LECO-like companies, to benchmark nationally to LECO-like companies. Then after that, once this retail market has introduced, then only having all these DD1 still under government ownership, maybe we can discuss about a kind of a PPP model for the existing DD1 to DD4 sub companies, but we can introduce this private owned or another PPP model, second, third discourse to a particular region. At that juncture, we can consider the removal of the distribution mother company or the parent company and allow these other DD1 to DD4 to operate independently. But until we have a kind of a retail market, we need one company as disco. That is the logic. After this disco has been, restructured, unbundled, then still under CEB, they have DD1 to DD4 internally divided. It's already divided as divisions. So that is why we have introduced DD1 to DD4 as sub-companies, but not to worry about the additional directors, that director structures and the criteria we can share later after this discussion, after this consultation period. It will not multiply. It will not multiply these direct numbers because when you have the experience in your private companies, you all know it will not multiply. So this, let's say, for example, if you have 5 directors for the distribution company, at least 2 will be appointed by as ex-officers, ex-officios. Like let's say 1 from the Ministry of Energy, 1 from the Ministry of Finance. Then if it is 5, it's only 3 appointed by the particular line ministry. Then the same, this director board will handle these other sub-companies as well. Sub-company ownership only held by the whatever the first level of companies. That first level of companies will share the will hold the shares only. They will not intervene on the licensing operation, not intervene on the functions. Then moving to the generation company, that theory is little different. You all know, you can you can benchmark, let's say, a private company, maybe a national law international, that let's assume one company is going to operate generation owned by CB. Still, NSO is there. NSO will call for procurement of energy. I think one already inquired that question. So whatever these licenses and the generation company can act as IPPs, so they can under PPS they will be signed with an NSO, but in a kind of a new tender, new procurement. So same generation company along with other IPPs, this except from CB on or previously CB on GENCOs, with the other IPPs, international, national, this GENCO or the subsidiary companies can go for the bidding with NSO as well. So that is why we need these separate renewable coal thermal like sub companies under one holding company, one mother company. That dilution of these companies into standalone separate companies will erode the this financial muscle power as well. If you take this renewable company, it has a huge asset base with hydros. Still one wind power plant, but still this hydro asset is more powerful, financially powerful. I have seen some clauses here when migrating from the existing model to the next model. This liability transfer is it's divided in kind of an unfair way to the hydros. So that is why that is one of the subsection we have already addressed in this reform under this concept paper. This renewable company will have a kind of a financial muscle power in future to go as a IPP in future procurement of energy through NSO. Then coal company. Coal is this Lanka coal company, and this coal power plant will be merged into another one company. It will go as it is. But let's say this Kalnitissa Sapokaskanda, as it is, it will go. We can merge together as a one separate company. It will go to the future as it is. But if we unbundle these GENCOs as well into standalone multiple companies, they will lose this financial muscle power. This asset base is not correctly valued as well. So we want to keep this generation company as a kind of a main energy company owned by the government for future generation, this future expansion of the generation as well. It is a government policy to keep a T&D 100% government owned and the existing national power plant as well under 100% government ownership. That is the reason behind this restructuring to the second, third levels of the subsidiary companies. To simplify that again, if there's no service company under transmission company, then we can easily say it's one transmission company. So if there are multiple companies for the discourse to one particular region, yes, we can allow these discourse to be separated without the holding distribution company. The reason behind this generation subsidiary companies are to make these three separate features separated from the main generation company and allow these future energy procurement to be this transparent and independent procurement through NSO will be open to the previously CB on generation company as well. That is why we need these multiple structured, restructured second, third layer companies. So it is not to multiply these directorships, so it can be easily resolved. For example, we can say, let's say, for example, now only you can three IPPs, let's say 3 separate companies under generation company. So let's say, for example, one floated tender, this generation company bid has won another tender from NSO. Yes, of course, then SPV, another company will be formed. So due to the, let's say, the winning percentage of the generation company in future will multiply the directorships, will multiply the number of companies. It will happen. So we don't have to be afraid about the number of companies. We have to be, we have to have a concern about the main line, the first line. So if it is not multiplied into several layers, so then we don't have to be worried that 12 separate companies are, we have decreased to 5 separate companies. So that is the answer for that main, major concern on the number of companies, right? Then here's again that about the energy policy, that here it is mentioned about the electricity policy under this act. But what we are talking about the energy policy. But we have to recognize, we have to think on that manner as well. In the Electricity Act, we can't mention about the energy policy. That is why we are planning, as I mentioned several times in some other forums as well, we need a strong energy act. Under a strong energy act, we can introduce an energy policy. We can introduce that the set of qualification and the criteria about a committee who's going to review the policies or the write the energy policy, that can be introduced in a separate energy act. It will be done in coming months with a kind of a rather wide range of with a wide range of stakeholders and the contributors. We are to go for a energy act with a kind of introduction of a new energy act and the policy. Then another question, I can't remember the consultant who has raised the question. That simple answer is, we all are not the owners. We are just the admin and the rulers. So we have to do that stakeholder consultation, but we have to mindful that we have to follow the government policy as well. Then that is why this T and D, our policy is 100% government. So that is one of the reason to have this NTNSP under 100% government indirect control through the transmission company. Initially, at the moment, it is more than 50% should be owned by the government, but in future, NTNSP will be 100% owned by transmission company, which is 100% owned by the treasury. But still, we are open for additional transmission licenses that can be funded and contributed by the private sector. Still, that more than 50% of the additional transmission licenses will be owned by the government.
I suppose you already all your questions are finished.
Not yet.
Yes.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay. We have time, right?
Yeah, we have time, but let's also try to be mindful.
That missing element LECO, yes, LECO will be remained as it is as a distribution company. At the moment, we are not thinking it to club with this distribution main companies here, but still under Main Energy Act, in future all these companies will be addressed separately. But under Electricity Act, yes, we have to mention about LECO as well. Then about the open access, I think I have already mentioned. We haven't touched about the sections and the provisions of the open access. It is not changed under the single buyer market model also. We are considering open access to be remained as it is, but still that discourse and distributed generation schemes, that limitation only we can discuss. And again, this limitation about 10 megawatt to 1 megawatt, yes, we are still open to discuss that one. Will not take additional time on that particular item, since we are reconsidering that with the comment which we have already received. Then the independency, yes, this regulator should be independent, but same time, so we have to be identified the accountability of the regulator as well. The main accountability of any policy or the implementation or non-implementation or whatever the plus and minus is owned by the government always. Government is the entity, whatever the party. Government is the entity who's having the public mandate, that we all should be accountable to the public mandate as well. That regulator should be there. There's no wind up of the regulator, but still strong independent regulator should be accountable to the public. That is the government policy. Then again, for Professor Andra Vijaypala, yes, that this distribution and this private involvement, as it is, I mentioned, once this retail market is open, yes, then only we can consider about the private involvement to the discourse. Until retail market is established, so we are thinking about 100% government-owned distribution. Still under KPIs, we can improve the efficiency level as well. That people-centric energy transition will be addressed through the discourse as well. Then for Isuru, yes, Supreme Court determination, all these determinations, now as Mr. Dompage mentioned, now the law is this act. So we have room to amend this act, the sections, but still the main idea behind the main the perspective from the Supreme Court, that determination, you remember that myself and now the CB and the co-chairman and Mr. Shavi itself, we made a petition, and the current energy minister together with MDCPC at the moment made a petition. So we all know the pain behind this, the whole process. We all together during this all 2-year period who has done this tremendous effort to to get the whatever possible amendments through the Supreme Court as well. So we had to mindful about the this determination while taking these amendments in this particular reform effort. Then again, this NIAC, the removal of the NIAC is due to that for the introduction of the Energy Act. Energy Act will introduce another committee or a kind of a council under the Ministry of Energy. That committee will whatever the consultation or the advisory services can be taken from that committee or the council under the Energy Act, not in this Electricity Act. And about this, we don't have to be, about this transfer plan. There's no doubt or guess on this transferring these additional or this whatever the existing labor to other companies. We don't have to have that kind of a doubt on that one, because it's very simple now. It will be 3 main these functions: generation, transmission, distribution. Within CB itself, it is very clearly demarked about these divisions as well. So at the initial phase, we are going to have a seminar session with CB employees as well. We have done one during I think before this October, about this letter, successive company letter, issuing that letter. Then we are planning to have another session with CB employees on 10th this month. Then in that session also we can educate all these employees. It's a very easy process with these generation, transmission and distribution companies at the first level. We can easily transform all these employees to 3 separate companies. NSO, it is very easy from planning to this procurement to implementation. We can easily identify the correct divisions of existing CB to transform into NSO. And I don't think that why this Temasek is working in Singapore, why it is not in Sri Lanka. We don't need to go behind Temasek years, but still we should find a Sri Lankan way with our strengths and opportunities we are having. But same time, we can see all these examples from all the world. But we all know, the senior people here knows, who has involved with the previous reform attempts, know that this reform and restructuring, right, it is more than 3 decades delayed, right? So that is why we have to go with this attempt to restructure first to 3 different companies at the first place. Then we can move into the another business model to market models. We don't want to be worried about any Singapore model or a Thai or this Philippine models. We have to find a Sri Lankan way. We are very sure that this restructured simple way will pay us to have a kind of a very good market model in future, starting with the single buyer model. But we have to be mindful that we are not that kind of a huge market, large market. We are still a 3 giga, less than 3 giga at a peak. We are a small market. We have to introduce our industries as well to the other markets as well to have certain set of market models. Then to Sivakaran, yes, PPS, yes, between NSOs, NSO and GENCOs, there will be PPS. They will act as IPP. And until we introduce retail market, we have to maintain this UNT, Unified National Tariff. And another very good point, it is not micro at our level. We will consider as a very strong point. The schedule number 2 has to be revisited, and we have to take a very clear note on that one as well. And discourse on the street lighting, that we are considering it as a policy change as well at the Ministry of Energy to reintroduce this street lighting into discourse. While we are doing this tariff policy, you all know that's under transfer plan. Before the transfer plan as well, we have to make certain these policies at the by the PSRS and also with the utility. One is the tariff policy. Under the tariff policy, yes, we can consider, we are thinking to reconsider on street lighting under discourse as well. Then last, there are few, but hydro, these are pump hydro, yes, it will not consider as a IPP due to obvious reasons. So we can consider this pump hydro, the first one, under generation company, under renewable generation company. So we can discuss on that particular matter, but for a simple short answer, yes, it will not be IPP at this juncture, but we can still discuss on some other business models as well. Sarah, if there's anything missing, you can, point out and I can answer.
Possibly, Pubudu, we have the full record of the proceedings. We have the full record of the chat. Unfortunately, I kept on saying you should put your contacts in your chat as well. Still, if there are anybody who has not put their contacts on the chat, we can do so that we can even come back to you and either get clarifications or give you a clarification so that you will not go empty-handed. So, if that is okay for the moment, we have spent almost 3.5 hours of very quality good time. I must thank everyone right around the table, and those who are still listening to us. It's about really 140 people are still there. At the peak, we had almost about 200 people. These have been a wonderful learning experience for all of us. And I'm sure you have been all ears. The committee, I think they were all here, most of them, and they would have been listening to all the stakeholders' consultations. And it was a very fulfilling experience. From the ISL point of view, we can be very happy that we facilitated this consultation meeting. I'm sure we'll continue to consult. There's one comment you want to make?
Just a quick comment to Mr. Pubudu Niroshan. Just a bit of advice, if I may, because we've also been there and done it with regard to these privatizations, divestments, valuations, and all of that. And we ourselves have been waiting for 25 years for this. What I would urge you to do is not to adopt a defensive approach to defend what you have presented. It is with responsibility that we talk about. There is no need to be intimidated or influenced or borrow from Temasek, right? And as a chartered accountant, I can tell you, when you create a holding company with a portfolio of companies, that tends to take away from the flexibility you might need to value, to unbundle further, and so on and so forth. So I would urge you, have a chat with Tilak, Siambala Pitia, and a few others like Nihal Vikramasuriya, and I'll be more than happy one-on-one to engage you to share with you the rationale for some of those suggestions so that, there is no Sri Lankan model and this model or that model. The principles behind a model or a concept is what we take. Just a thought.
Thank you very much. As I said before, it's been a tremendous learning experience for everyone around the table. So, though you all are joining, most of them online, I'm sure you have taken a lot of your time, as well as I think you will not regret that you have made a positive contribution. Even if you have been listening, you also made a positive contribution by being made aware, so that you will not start talking everywhere, and gave you an opportunity to talk. And our channels are open. The ISL is still open for your constructive suggestions and comments. And we'll continue to engage with you if you would like to do so. And we'll make sure that the best that you can produce out of this consultation, we'll do so. And within a very short time, within next 5 days, we should be able to come out with our document. And I must thank everybody who have been here, especially the people behind the scene, Zara's team. Zara is also new to the ISL, and she has also learned quite a lot in the last couple of months. And so thank you, Zara, and all your please convey our best regards to and our thanks and appreciation. You are a very young team who have been behind all these arrangements. It has gone seamlessly. We have not had any major problem. So that's a very. You want to say something? Apu, do you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, just before the wind up, yeah, still this stakeholder consultation, written consultation period is open till 14th February. Want to note that it is not to defend, but we value this stakeholder consultation. That is why we have extended the time from this 7th to 14th as well. So as a government, with a government with 2/3, it easily the government can go to the parliament without having a stakeholder consultation on the concept paper. Then with the last experience which we already had, all these members, we know they have consumed their money, time, the effort, and taken into the legal confrontation as well. But one thing we have to be mindful that this exercise, this whatever the paper, is not the bill, right? So what we have presented is a concept paper. So the model very clear. There's that checklist I have shared during my presentation as the last slide, that ticks, right? So all these revisions to the act, all these provisions to the amendment to the act will be according to the government policy. So it is non-negotiable. Then what we are going to do is entire 100% unbundling, that is for sure. It is missed by generations. It is missed by 2 to 3 decades. So that is why we have to go one by one. So if stakeholders are demanded to go with the kind of a variety of these changes, drastic changes, it will not work. Our electricity sector is too small to capture that kind of a drastic changes. That is why first we have to stand, then we will walk, then only we can run. So it is very simple that this government will not fail on that one. So that is why we need, we have discussed this with development agencies as well. The main requirement is unbundling. It will be fulfilled during this exercise. But having said that, still that national energy policy or the energy act or these other company structures are still we can discuss the way and the functions and the structure or the director board of these criteria we can discuss. Then we want to remind that is Dr. Tilak Simlapati is also a member of this committee. So it's a kind of a collaborative attempt. It's not a kind of a one particular party attempt. So we have to be mindful on that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think everybody is mindful of the enormous contribution this committee has also made. we have seen very significant shifts from what we thought was impasse. I mean, it was not really going to work from the day one. So now it has come to a very most of the suggestions from the engineering committee for sure have been incorporated. We are very thankful for that. And let's continue to engage ourselves in a very constructive discussion. So as I kept on writing to the ISL membership, it's a very opportune time to engage ourselves and not to start talking here and there. It's your chance to make a positive contribution. I think we have had that, and we'll continue to keep our channels open for any more constructive suggestions. And once again, I think I don't need to labor my point again by thanking anybody. So thank you very much once again, and good night. And tomorrow is a holiday, so you can rest because our people have all worked very hard. So let's see again. We'll be coming to you with all our suggestions in written form, and then again we can have a discussion on our submission to you as well. So these to the entire committee as well as to all the members. We had done our job to the best expectation that I had when we started this discussion. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.